of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Cindy, would you call the roll?
Certainly. Supervisor Schneiderman?
Here.
Councilwoman McNamara? Here. Councilman Martell?
Here.
Councilman Bouvier?
Here.
Councilman Schivoni?
Present.
There's always one.
Very
Gotta be
present.
different.
Very.
All right, so
Always
we're,
present.
we're all here.
And accountant.
Always. You have to be here to be present.
All right, so we have a relatively brief work session agenda. Today we're going to talk about potential new athletic facility in Spionk, West Hampton area. Then we're going to talk a little bit about downtown revitalization in Hampton Bays, and then we're going to do some updates, and then we'll have some executive session items on the agenda. So we're going to start with the proposed skate park in Spionk, West Hampton. We are joined by Kristen Doulos, our Director of Parks and Recreation, who's had a very busy summer, and Daryl Baumer, Assistant Town Parks Director, Chris Clapp, resident of West Hampton Beach, also some other interested residents. So, Kristen, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Would you like us to come up to
Yes,
the
please.
table?
You want to have one person,
We
yeah.
can have, yeah, come on. Chris, come on.
Thanks, Kristen.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. I just want to point out, we're also joined by, if you could just say who we're joined by, that would be helpful.
You can introduce everybody.
Yeah.
My name is J.J. Baronis. I'm an artist and father, and grew up in West Hampton Beach skating in the 70s.
We may have skated by each other, I don't know.
I was fortunate enough in the formative
So the
years.
problem with this is that we don't,
Yeah.
unless you're at the
We'll save that
microphone.
for later.
Yeah,
Or
I
recording.
just wanted the board to know. what-
J.J. Baronis.
Okay.
JJ Baronis, I'm gonna repeat it because you're not gonna come out on the recording if I don't.
Yep.
Justin DeMarco.
I'm sorry?
Jesse DeMarco.
Jesse DeMarco?
Justin.
Justin.
Okay.
Justin.
Who else?
Sean Mack, owner of Island Surf in West Hampton Beach.
Sean from Island Surf?
Edward Jabina.
Edward Jabina. Okay.
So, good morning. I know that the agenda listed the topic today as talking about a skate park, a potential skate park proposal at a new park location that we're currently vetting in the Spionk-Remsenburg area. So I just wanted to back up a little bit and talk about the initial conceptual idea for that park. It's on the property of 178 Old Country Road in the Spionk-Remsenburg hamlets. Currently, we have a very preliminary conceptual design. The town board actually just adopted a resolution this past Tuesday to allocate some funding to get that design and plan going. But we're currently envisioning some ball fields, a soccer field, potentially a future BMX pump track, parking areas, field lighting, restroom facilities. This idea came about because we're kind of outgrowing our existing facilities in the town. We have one Little League ball field west of Red Creek Park in Hampton Bays. The East End Little League has been very successful and has been requesting ball field space for quite some time now. So I just wanted to reiterate that because, as you know, we get many requests for amenities, fields, parks, facilities, and we can only do so much at any given time, given budgets and
We had an issue too, trying to get more use out of the Hampton West fields, right? Because we couldn't illuminate it because of Pine Barrens issues, so.
Right, we were trying to give longer playing time, at least at that Hampton West field, by putting field lighting on it. But we did run into issues with the Pine Barren Commission in that area, because it's a very sensitive location. So that was another reason that kind of boosted us to kind of put this on the front burner and get this going. So, you know,
This is a sort of similar to North Sea athletic facilities and Red Creek athletic facilities, so this would sort of be the western sort of sister of those facilities.
yes, it would provide a place in the western portion of the town for people to have ball fields and lit facilities.
Okay.
So this group here has recently reached out to the town. There's been interest. I think the initial idea was to try to put a park in the village of West Hampton. That was met with some challenges, and so they've been exploring other locations that could work for this site. Given that we're kind of, you know, delving into this area and there's a lot of land there, we could potentially build a skate park here. And I think that the group here today wanted to present their thoughts and ideas for, you know, what that might look like and, you know, what their plan is for getting to that point.
How big is the site?
The area where we're proposing the current park is how big?
Is only about 5 acres.
But we designated, because we changed the CPF designation of a portion of the property, I want to say it was about 12 acres.
There's,
This is two.
how many overall is it?
The whole property is 160 acres, but there's this part in the front that is kind of already cleared.
Right.
I believe that's only about 5 acres of cleared land in the front there. It may be more, but
I think the area that we designated for active park use is bigger than 5 acres.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's easily double that.
Okay, it could be. I mean,
Yeah, it's just not cleared. I think.
yeah, it may be, it's just, we're just focusing on the part that's cleared already, just so we don't have to create any additional, you know, land disturbances. and
Yeah,
stuff
and
like that.
it was fairly graded and even there too, so it was just a good spot to
Right.
get started.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question quick? So on the aerial that we have where that red triangle is, I'm guessing you're talking about the rectangle, like just making that a rectangle?
So the red triangle was the piece that we had to redesignate as recreational.
The bottom.
So that's
Oh, yeah.
added to the green arrow-looking
yeah.
Yeah,
bottom.
okay, that's the one.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
so-
this
That's
whole,
part of
Oh, it's
it.
the
Yep.
whole
So I-
rectangle,
So I
though.
think it's,
Yeah, here, Cindy, this will give you a better view of it.
yeah, it's that
but,
whole
yeah, I think
thing.
we actually went across.
Yeah, okay, it's exactly what I
I think it was
thought it
12 acres altogether. Yeah.
I don't think we went into this. I think that this is the area right here, this whole rectangle.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's the,
So this is the
base.
site here.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the
Yep.
basic
Yeah.
plan, yeah.
Thank you.
Right, and I want to say that's roughly 12 acres, but
So this
The
is-
whole, this,
that,
yeah.
Kristen has a better drawing of it.
It's hard now. Well, you can't see this one, right?
Yeah, the little red triangle.
here's the door, this one if you want to.
Yeah, this one. that-
I'm good, I've
that's-
seen it.
That's a better map.
Yeah, it's,
The triangle size is 6.72 acres.
Yeah, so this is clearly twice that.
that's a triangle, but
Yeah.
the
There's just
larger
the triangle
rectangle is
Is a portion, right?
Then this
It's
must
in
be
excess
the
of
12
12.
acres, yeah.
in excess
Okay.
of it, maybe more than 12 acres.
You were probably just calculating.
Yeah,
that
maybe I
one
was just,
spot
yeah,
when you-
maybe that's what it was.
Okay, so continue on.
So that's where we're at for this park. like I said, these gentlemen reached out, within the past several weeks and have had some coordination with Daryl. I know Daryl had a meeting with them. Councilman Bouvier had kind of connected us together. And so, I'm going to hand it off to Chris to, really they wanted to present their ideas to you today regarding a skate park at this facility.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and the town board for having us here today. Much appreciated. I know many of you from many different roles. I have a bad habit of volunteering for a number of different things at a number of different levels of government, and so I'm always happy to be here at the town. I'll just give you a little bit of perspective as to how we got here today. And then I will hand it over to JJ Veronis to talk about, these action parks. We're trying to refrain from using the term skate parks because there's people on roller skates, there's people on bikes, there's little kids on scooters and balance bikes, and there's a whole spectrum of users that utilize these types of facilities. So we're really trying to think of considering it an activity park or an action park or action facility rather than a skate park. That term is a little bit dated at the moment, even though that's likely the predominant use. So, just trying to pull back on that term a little bit to be more inclusive, to reflect the inclusive nature of these types of facilities. I could attest to the challenges at Hampton West. I have a son who's engaged pretty heavily with Little League. That site has neighbor problems with traffic coming and going, has limited parking. Foul balls go through people's windshields all the time in the parking lot. That field is well used and highly constrained. So I get the need for a new facility on the western end of town in general. So as Kristen...
Also, you can't, accessing that park, it's through a residential.
That's been the biggest challenge. The neighbors, there's a limited parking, and then it starts to spill over into the neighborhood, and those first few homes along the entrance to that park have been vocal.
And we can't do any
and
further
rightfully
clearing
so.
on the property.
This is much more accessible.
Right. So I could attest to the challenge of that facility and the need to do something holistic at another facility. Makes a ton of sense. As you mentioned, I live in the village of West Hampton Beach. I've been engaged as part of their Conservation Advisory Council for several years. I finally stepped down off of that. As a result of that, I've been engaged in their LWRP process. And so we've, as part of that LWRP process, they've been taking an inventory of all their open spaces, facilities, parks, and and in the process, during a lot of those meetings, the village trustees would lament about kids riding up and down Main Street, just hanging out on the sides of the roads, doing wheelies down Main Street on their bicycles, and just kind of loitering around because they really don't have anything else to do once school is out. And, you go to Glover's Park, which is just north of Main Street. There's really a nice little fountain there and a couple of bocce ball courts. But then you look up and there's like soda cups in the lights, and clearly the kids are bored, right? They need something better, more productive to channel their activities towards. And not everybody is a lacrosse, soccer, football person, right? So we approached the village trustees with the concept of something that we could divert the kids to get them to be more productive. And so we walked around the village, and we looked at the Great Lawn. There's a bunch of constraints with the types of uses that could occur on the Great Lawn, as well as the complexities of negotiating with the town, the church, and the village to certify a use and how often it could be used. We looked at Glover's Park. The bocce ball players are apparently passionate about keeping their bocce ball courts. And then we looked at the marina. And the marina looked like a great spot. It had a nice graded hillside up against Stevens Lane Bridge there. It seemed to fit in well with the beach surf culture, having it on the water. And we had initially had some support, and this is, I apologize, this is going back about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And then we hit a roadblock there due to the complexities in competing. You know, there's a boat ramp there, but no trailer parking, so they have to legally find some trailer parking. They want to have an amphitheater or a portable amphitheater. And so there's all these other competing uses. And so that's when the team behind me here, Sean and Justin, you know, said, hey, what about the Bauer property? It's adjacent to the elementary school fields. It's still really accessible by bicycle, walking, skateboard for the majority of the residents in that area. And so that's when we reached out to Councilman Bouvier and Mrs. Doulos to figure out if that was a good fit or not. And then at that point in time, it became apparent that this park was gaining momentum, and that there was a corner of the park that could be well suited for a multi-sport action type facility, and that it also embraced that far western portion of the town. And so that's kind of how we got here today, and that's really all I personally planned on saying. I'd like to hand it off to some of the answer some questions first of all, and then hand it off to.
I was actually going to ask you about the Bauer property, but I think there are residences around that too, and
That's a major
there's certainly going to be
concern,
noise
yeah.
impacts
Yeah.
from this. But what's nice about Bauer is a lot of people could walk to it
Yes.
or skate
And,
to
and
it.
it would be more visible,
Or
right? So
bike
the
to
more
it.
eyes there are on an activity, the less
Whereas
likely.
this, you're going to have to get in the car and somebody's going to have to drop you off. But
Or the hopper provides some access as well.
The other attractive thing about putting it here is that you'd have the parking and restroom facility, as part of the greater park, whereas, you'd have to go back and do all of that at the Bauer property as well. And there are some surrounding homes that, we do get some concerns from them already sometimes about things there, so I would anticipate they wouldn't. But
also-
it's not to say it's,
We also might have clearing limitation issues there, and there's already existing parks, storage building there, as you guys probably know. And that parcel is 5.4 acres, so, there's just not a lot of room there to put it.
Yeah, and again, from the, from the room perspective, you look at like some of the biggest action facilities, skate parks, if you will, that have been built, and Montauk is one of the biggest ones there is. That's 19,000 square feet, so just under half acre of actual space, right? So, the actual facility doesn't take up a ton of space. It's, you need parking, you need the restrooms, you need water fountains, and so, I believe on the map that the Parks Department has provided you there, the area here is a full acre, right? So that would be enough, more than enough for multiple types of facilities to be built out over time.
we had actually penciled in a BMX pump track
Yeah.
there in our initial thoughts for the facility.
So, I mean, you could do a concrete action facility and a dirt or clay BMX thing within the full acre that's currently allotted.
sure.
So when Chris came to me about this, and understood the difficulties involving West Hampton Beach.
And they were rational, yeah.
That at that time, because Rick had started looking at other facilities, we'd looked at a couple, and this one made a whole lot of sense, and I think there's been a lot of support for it, the one in Repsburg Spion, for all those reasons. That upper back corner doesn't require grading. Whatever you fit in there, you want more. You want less flat, and you want more ups and downs in the back there. So, and Darrell had sketched in this BMX thing, and it just seemed logical that this might be a way to combine these two or put that together as a skate park, which there is clearly a demand for. But because it's a facility with all athletics going on, it just seemed to make sense that we'd have one centralized place in the western part of the town. That
You could imagine a parent having a Little League or soccer tournament and have multiple kids, and, instead of them being all fidgety and in their parents' business all day on the sidelines, you could say, okay, go use that, go play over there. It totally makes sense.
So we had looked at it as a phase 2 kind of thing, I think, when the original presentation because we're still evaluating this site as well, so we'd looked at that, but, and then we had discussed that there could be possibly local community can help support this in any way that is possible. Those are things to consider as well. So it just made sense to me. That's why we're here.
Do you know the proposed clearing percentages? It's a very large piece, is what I'm saying. It looks well below 50%.
Oh, yeah. I actually apologize. I had a printout of this that I left on the printer. That's why I have all my numbers, but I believe the whole parcel was like less than 8% of the whole 160 acres.
Right.
You probably remember we had that chart.
Yeah, it was
clear.
yeah.
I had it all figured out.
It was good, yeah.
And most of what was shown in the concept has already been cleared.
Right, exactly. So, and there's already actually kind of like a hardened road access way that, like, if you look at
you
the
could
overlay,
see.
we kind of it made sense that it just kind of worked out that would be our entry into the park, and,
Yeah, you could drive back there right now. It's high grasses, but cleared, for the most part.
And doesn't appear to me to be intrusive to residents or otherwise.
Yeah, there's also a buffer, plenty of buffer to Old Country Road.
Sorry.
I think JJ can speak to some community outreach that he had made in that area, the residential area.
Yeah, I believe our plan was, to have JJ talk a little bit more about how these work, because he was heavily engaged with the helping the Montauk Coalition build out that facility.
Okay.
Are you involved in the
I
Little
actually had
Leagues?
a question
over
before
there?
we move on. I like the idea, and I like the location. I have a senior in West Hampton Beach High School, and it's a problem for kids that aren't in lacrosse, and it gets worse when they get into high school as it becomes more competitive. And I had a 3-sport athlete going into high school who is now currently not in any sports because she didn't make varsity. Not to no fault of her own, but it becomes extremely competitive. And in West Hampton, there's lots of travel leagues and personal coaching going on, and kids kind of drop out of sports. And having it here would be great, but I just don't see this solving the problem of our kids leaving school and having nothing to do and having them go into town. Because this involves, until you can drive and get in your car and you're a senior, which you're probably not, very much into going to places like this, it involves coming home on the bus, getting a parent, getting mom or dad to load up your equipment, get in the car, drive to the western end of town, and either drop you there and leave you, or, carpooling and whatnot, which I think parents would make it work, I really do. But it doesn't solve for me the issue of having somewhere in West Hampton where we have such a high concentration of teens and having somewhere safe for them to go and a really a good thing for them to do versus going into town and riding up and down Main Street. I mean, we have problems with the kids on bikes in East Quogue. It's the same thing. They could ride to this. They can't ride their bikes to Spion. So
Well,
that's
actually,
my
I
only
kind of have
concern.
an answer to that, because that was my concern as well. With the community center, we're going to hopefully set up a transit system with our local buses to take seniors to the pool when they need to do that after-school programs at the community center, which in conjunction with the schools, it would be able to take kids to this facility and as another mode of access. So, you know, that as a community sort of thing that all works together, working with the schools, working with the community center, working with senior services and youth services. I think there's a way to alleviate that. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
I
I just
think
don't want
you're
to
right, parents
totally,
have to
I
get
just don't
involved.
want to totally give up on this, you know, as we talk about making things more walkable and more accessible, you know, and we start adding in more transportation to get to the community center, to get to the park, you know, having things central and located where they can, you know, now they have a beautiful Main Street. They can go and they can go get ice cream and then they can ride back to the park. It's just a very community-oriented facility, and I think it would do better in the community.
Yeah, unfortunately, that doesn't seem to work, particularly with the jurisdiction. We did look at the Bauer property, but it's too small and had some other issues as well, so. Plus, we're not just talking about skate park, we're also talking about soccer fields and baseball.
No, I
No, but
understand, I'm just talking about something in
But
the
it's
immediate
a
area.
good point to make, and
Bauer is probably
It's
big
not a
enough.
sports field.
You could probably do something similar to what they have in Montauk at Bauer. There's enough room there.
for a skate park.
A skate
Yeah,
park.
right, but there is some potential resistance.
I mean, we could re-examine that, but yeah, I do foresee the neighboring properties.
I just don't want to, I don't want to just give up on that, I'd like to explore that further.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that it's in proximity to the school there makes it, you know, walkable and definitely goes to that concept of keeping people, you know, the kids can leave.
Yeah, I mean, if we could do that, that would be great.
I
but
mean,
we-
you know, that's the only thing that I did think was,
I know when we
feeling
reached
about that
out for the
location
community
was, you
center,
know-
we were thinking about putting it there. At one
Yeah.
time, we got a lot of
Yeah.
pushback.
So the Montauk skate park is downtown. It is downtown, it's near residences. It's very popular.
But Red Creek has a skate park that's a destination park, and the kids find their way there. I mean, I don't think there'd be much difficulty for the kids who really wanted to skate. You know, these skate parks are not like they used to be. It's not just a vert ramp. It's a whole series of obstacles, little rooms they put together that, you know, they can do their different tricks and they can choreograph them in different ways. They spend a lot of time at these parks. So I think once one is built, it becomes a real destination for these kids.
No doubt, and I'm sure Montauk is getting people from all over the county who are going out there to use it. It's,
And the Bauer property
One
is
of
in
a
the
kind.
village, so they would be the permitting entity.
No,
It's not. So
it's
that would
town
be us,
property,
okay.
but it's, you got neighbors that are.
We own
very
it.
It's next to the
proximate
school, though, it's next to the West
If I
Hampton.
may just
West Hampton
interject,
no, I think
20
you
years
may be
ago.
right. We might have
That's
to
not
go
in
through the
West Hampton
village.
Is that's part of the village?
It's in the village.
That
No,
was my
it's not.
question.
It's
It
on
is.
the other side of Onek. Onek is the dividing line.
Oh,
next-
okay.
Oh, it's outside the
It's
village?
outside.
Yes.
One
The
parcel
Onek
away, okay.
that's, which is,
Is the
Which is the
dividing line
problem.
between the
Which is
town
how
and
we
the
got here.
village.
Yeah,
If I could just say, 20 years ago, I was the person who spearheaded with a whole group of people to build a skate park in Hampton Bays. And we looked at the Bauer property even back then and got such pushback. And then we looked at it again for the pool, and then we looked at it again for the community center. And each time, it was problematic. Because we wanted the same thing, for it to be close to the school and within walking distance and everything, and it seemed like the perfect location. But every time, it became a problem. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I think, Sean, you were part of that group, weren't you? Yes, you were, so there's a lot of. Yes, yes.
Yeah, we're at the point of having to redo the Red Creek Skate
Yeah.
Park now. Yeah.
but it is true, Sunday, and I appreciate you saying that, because it's what, you know, when we went to look at putting the community center there, we had the same issue. It was problematic on its face, so, you know, I just don't want to, we gotta learn a little bit from history, but I'm not dismissing it, I'm just, you know, we've already kind of tried to climb that slope and didn't get too far.
Do your Little Leagues play the Brookhaven teams? I know Brookhaven built fields in East Moriches and also on Moriches Middle Line Road there. I taught in Santa Moriches, and I know that those fields were teeming with kids, playing baseball was
I
really
can answer that one.
fantastic.
if you like.
Yeah.
So the Little Leagues have their own districts. The East End Little League basically covers from the Brookhaven line to probably Jones Road and Hampton Bays, so it includes East Quogue, West Hampton, Spionk, all that. They play within their own league. If they want to do an agreement with another league, they do play Hampton Bays on occasion. It's approved by district, so they tend to play east, not west. They don't cross that line unless they play travel ball.
And I had reached out to Brookhaven when they were having, issues with field space in the East End Little League, and they said, we are filled with our own leagues.
Right.
We can't accommodate anymore, so.
The similar setup to this, although slightly more embedded in a neighborhood, is the Veterans Park in Northport, right? That has the skate park built into with the surrounding traditional ball fields around it. And so that's a modern
Well,
skate
that's-
park that
The
gets.
North Sea complex is like that, so is Red Creek. So we have complexes where we have skate parks.
I mean, if you would like,
Destination.
we could canvass, we'd be more than happy to go out, and JJ's been doing a lot of canvassing of residents and business owners in the Eastport, Spionk, Remsenburg area. We could, if you would like us to take one last stab and talk to the neighbors around Bauer, we could do that. We just agreed to follow the path of least resistance with the current setup. So if you would like us to do that, we will.
I just don't want to see it I don't want to give up on it without a full, I just think it's the perfect place for it.
We could try again if you'd like, but again, this was the site that was offered to us, and
And I'm not opposed to it here, I'm not,
happy to do that.
No, it's just, there's been a history of trying to deal with that property for a long time, so I can see it on everybody's faces, because we've tried this
We can take a look
before.
at it.
But, yeah, I mean, you want to help lead the charge?
I will, I absolutely would.
Happy to do that.
Okay, we could talk
okay,
tomorrow, next week, whenever.
No problem.
We'll catch up. Okay.
So, I have visited the Montauk Park. So I was there for the ribbon cutting. The supervisor and a town board member both invited me out to be part of that ribbon cutting. Legislator Fleming was there, lots of people were there. I know they raised a lot of money, I think over $1 million in donations. It's really a fabulous facility. It's gorgeous. It took a while to build it, but when you see how many people are using it, it's worth taking. It's always worth taking a ride out to Montauk, but to see this facility, so you get an idea of what these modern skate parks look like. They're very different from anything we currently have. So it's not like the Red Creek Park. It's not like the North Sea Park. Those, I think, is there any others that we have, skate parks?
Red
Those are-
Creek's
Not us,
20
but
years
the
old
Long
now.
River has-
Yeah.
Perfect.
They're going towards different designs now,
Yeah.
and like you said, more inclusive of
They're,
all the actions for it.
right, and they're, you don't have these movable ramps and things like that, and they're poured reinforced concrete, and they're like they're like sculptures. They're beautiful, and they flow. And I have some pictures of it, but you guys really should
Daryl
go.
has some.
I wrote some
I have
concept
some really good
ideas.
drone
It's not your
drone
half
shots
pipe
of it I could
anymore.
send
Probably
you
should have handed
guys.
this to you first.
Yeah.
It's a world-class park, and
So-
when I get my chance to talk, I'll explain a little bit about it. But I also have some photographs, and everyone here is invited to our first event next Saturday if you want to come see it in person. wait my
I'd
turn.
like to
I
follow up.
didn't even know
some
there
of
was
those
that
are-
many
are
skaters when I went to that opening.
And then two of them were
I- yeah.
just.
There were people who usually skate at Red Creek that were at that opening, so people will travel for it.
Yeah.
A lot of Southampton people were there.
I'd like to follow up on one thing the supervisor said about the ribbon cutting. You know, I've been engaged with local government projects for over 2 decades now. I've been to a lot of ribbon cuttings and press events and, you know, all of things that supposedly have 80+% public support behind them. I had never seen a crowd turn out for a ribbon cutting ceremony like the hundreds, literally hundreds, if not 1,000
Yeah.
people that showed up to celebrate the opening of that skate park. It was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you for bringing that up. I meant to bring that up because I've been to a lot of different things, whether it's
It really
the
felt like
groundbreaking of a sewage treatment plant in Shirley, or you know, or it's a new directive by the supervisor. I've never seen anything like that.
It was like almost like a forgotten sector of the community that suddenly now
Suddenly
had
was-
a place.
Yeah.
And boy, they turned out in large numbers.
I will
And a lot of young people were there. And I didn't realize there were so many skateboarders, but apparently there are.
I went to the ribbon cutting too, and I was walking back to my car on my way out, and there was a guy that was showing up there, and I guess he was with one of the bands, and he was commenting that he thought he was going to show up and then be like, you know, 2 or 3 kids on their skateboards, you know, riding around, and he just couldn't believe how many, like, people had showed up. It was just different age categories. There was older people there, there was young people there, you know, just every demographic was there. I mean, it was just unbelievable how many people are into this type of, you know, activity, you know, and this community feel of this.
This is creeping into the third generation now. I mean, you know, maybe back in the 80s, some kids skated, they became parents, some of those kids skated, but now everybody pretty much skated at one time or another who are having the kids now. So it makes a big difference.
My first skateboard was an oval piece of wood with metal wheels.
Black Knight?
Not that I'm dating.
They hadn't even invented
Black
the wheel
Knight.
yet.
John's partially responsible for inventing it.
It had square wheels back then.
I worked so hard to make them
I'd
right.
like to hand it over to JJ Veronis, who really played a pivotal role in skateboarding culture in general, as well as assisting the Montauk Coalition over the finish line.
Thank you. I'll also like to say thank you very much for having us here today, Supervisor Schneiderman and all council people. My name's JJ Veronis. I grew up surfing and skating here in West Hampton Beach in the 70s on during the formative years alongside such local legends as Michael Schermeyer, Ricky Rasmussen. They took us out skating, surfing countless times. Luke Moore was a wonderful skater. There was Brendan McGill, there was John Tazar, there was Greg Demersion. And back then in the 70s, and this is when the sports were fledgling, there was, and what I'd like to say, an established community of skaters and surfers here, as long as many other townships all the way out on the East End. This is the core of skating and surfing on the East End, and it has a long history here and continues to do so. And as Councilman Martell had pointed out outside and just now, skating has evolved tremendously. And it is a global sport, as we witnessed with the Olympics 2 summers ago. I won't say it peaked a couple years ago, but it is mainstream, and it is really the future. It is such a vibrant activity, and it is all-inclusive in many areas of culture, in skating and sports, in fashion, in lifestyle, etc. So it's become a lot larger. My involvement, I also grew up skating in New York City alongside New York City pioneer and champion Andy Kessler, who built the Montauk Skate Park in 1998. And God bless him for getting it through the town board and getting it done. And back then I saw that space and it was pretty scrubby. It was cracked up tennis courts and prickly bushes, and they said, here, take this. Well, now it's a diamond in the rough. I am a founding member of the Montauk Skate Park Coalition with my partner John Britton, and we worked alongside David Lease. I began working on it in 2010 with Julia Prince and John Rooney of Rex, along with Tom Dess and various others. We made some
I'm not sure that everybody are going to know all those people.
Oh, okay. That's the East Hampton government, so your constituents in the next town.
Julia Prince, a former councilwoman.
Yes.
David Lease is current councilwoman.
Current
Tom
councilwoman.
Dess, it works state parks for that
Excuse me,
area.
I thought everybody would know.
I know. I'm former supervisor myself, so I know for East End.
So we made some progress in 2010. We had the basketball court moved over. Andy unfortunately passed away in 2009. He died of a wasp sting. And when that happened, I, being dear friends with him and growing up, I sort of grabbed the torch and took on the march of renovating the skate park, which was the initial idea. In 20 months ago, I met with John Britton and David Lease at Town Line Barbecue in December, and we talked about a $175,000 renovation to fix the old park, which was getting banged up, and the surface was very gritty, and it needed improvement, long discussed. A couple beers later, it turned into $300,000, and with a real outpouring of enthusiasm from the community of Montauk, and Sag Harbor, which is a big skate community in East Hampton and Amagansett, it really took on a head of steam. We said to ourselves, let's go for the big picture. And we went for the whole enchilada in a design. And the design was really, as skating is, to be inclusive. The old park was a tough park to skate, and it was intermediate to advanced, so it was not for everybody. We wanted to open that up to families and beginners and make it much more inclusive, which is what skating is all about. And that was our initial plan. We went out and surveyed the community of skating, the local community, also all of the skaters in New York City, and I have dear friends that are countrywide in California. They're in the Skateboarding Hall of Fame. They're big names like Lance Mountain and Steve Olson and Tony Alva. And they all responded with the survey. And we designed a park that had 5 components, which was beginner, a snake run, which is easy to get into, and also encouraging for older skaters like myself. I'm a lifelong skater. I'm 59. It's what keeps me Peter Pan. And I can say that for many other people as well. We have a street course, which is the new sort of format for skating and is part of the Olympics and was the most popular. We have a flow bowl, which makes our park world-class and available for trials if there were ever Olympic trials or state things. And we kept the Andy Kessler Bowl in his memorial. So there are 5 components to the park. The process was fascinating, very interesting. It evolved over periods of time, and really it was all about the community. We opened up with a GoFundMe page. Within a week, we had $25,000. And it wasn't from the deep pockets. It was, hi, my name's Joey. I'm 12 years old. I skate all my life. Here's $25. That would be followed up by, hi, we're Joey's parents. Here's $150. And it really snowballed and was wonderful on how it evolved. Eventually, a lot of people doubted the project, and certainly with the fundraising, because there are some projects that stalled out, the Montauk Playhouse with the pool, etc. But it really took on a life of its own, and I think it embodies the spirit of what skateboarding is all about. And as I said, growing up here in the 70s, there were no skate parks around anywhere except for Huntington, Northport, and there was a concrete park, in fact.
Greenport.
Not Greenport. Forgive me for
Empty
forgetting.
swimming pools.
Empty swim. So when we were here in the 70s, we built.
Except for vinyl.
We were, and this is a common term. It's DIY, do it yourself, and most skate communities around do that, and they build their own facilities. They find the materials, they get together. It's not an organized sport. You don't have a coach. you don't have a team, you don't have financing. It's kids coming together with that passion and enthusiasm, and all you need is a skateboard. Well, we would build ramps in our driveways and backyards, and the culture started, and we did skate in an empty pool or two. There was one in Southampton here, an old woman named Miss Amory, and if you picked weeds, you were able to skate. And everybody picked weeds because she had the pool. And we were echoing what we saw from California, and we would only know that through Skateboarder magazine, which came once every month. There was no cell phones, there was no quick information back then, so it was all word of mouth and seeped down. I could go on and talk about that past, but I'm just really proud to be part of the Montauk Park. The fact that we got it done in under 20 months is pretty exceptional. The quality of the park is world-class. It's really meant to have a 30-year lifespan. It's poured concrete with steel rebar reinforced. The concrete's 7 inches thick. It's essentially no maintenance. The drains are set up, you sweep leaves, the drains take care of the water, and you shovel snow when the time comes. Other than that, the park is zero maintenance. We did away with the fences. The park is open. It's accessible from sunrise to sunset. The liability issue, which is always a big concern, was resolved through the town attorneys. I'm not one of legalese, but if you wanted to find out more about that, you could speak to John Jilnicki and Mick Master. But that's the standard in New York State, New York City, and across the country now. Why would a baseball field be locked up or behind a fence, or a soccer field? It's the same thing. It's a public park, a skate park. So it's open for that reason. In the 21 days since the park has been open, and yes, it was exciting to be at the ribbon cutting, which I did have a couple words for. There was a huge turnout, 300-400 people, and it really embodied the enthusiasm behind the sport and what the whole skating culture is. There are kids, I was there the other day, there was a 2-year-old child wrapped up in pads, and his father was there pushing around. When you're there to skate, he could be next to a 14-year-old that would help him skate, or an 8-year-old. There'd be a 24-year-old, there'd be a 40-year-old, there'd be a 60-year-old, all skating together. And they lend each other as to being the fabric of what the sport is about. The park's been teeming every day with anywhere between 20 and 50 people skating. The local school of Montauk is now putting together after-school program there, and we hope to have clinics. We established ourselves as a 503c1, so we have monies for those programs and are still accepting donations. And we have our first event next Saturday, which is a skate contest with cash prizes for all age groups, male and female, all genders included. And this will be in celebration of Andy's life. I hold an annual event. And I would hope that you would have an opportunity to come out and see the park in person, because it really is spectacular. It is a sculpture, among other things. David Lease had a wonderful vision of doing some landscaping and removing some brush on a hill, and we adjoined it to the local ball fields down below. It opened the park up and allowed it to breathe. We share the bathroom facilities down below. There's a brewery and a pizza place. So it's really become a go-to spot. Families are showing up there and hanging out for the sunset, reading books. Couldn't say more for it being a initial success with the community, and we hope that it has a long life.
Great job, JJ.
Great job.
So that's what we want.
Well, it's funny because East
brewery
Hampton
or-
call me and say, "Oh, everybody talks about Red Creek and they want us to fix up our skate park." And then as soon as Montauk was built, we were getting the calls.
No, I
"See
immediately,
Montauk, we want Montauk."
no, I know. When I was out there, people kept coming up to me saying, you know, East Hampton has set the bar.
Yeah, like
Are you gonna be able to, you know, do something in Southampton, you know, which now has obviously second-rate facilities compared to East Hampton, so sometimes there's some competition between the two towns, but, you know.
I mean, I'm sorry, what I really wanted to do today was to get some agreement from the board or understanding that this is something that we want to do, and I think I'm hearing that. The next phase is the warehouse and all the
Yeah.
rest of that stuff.
Where is a big question, and how is a big question. So once we find the location, how do we pay for it? And I think that's going to be interesting too. So in Montauk, I don't, other than the town providing the land, I don't know how much the town contributed financially.
265.
265,000?
Yeah,
So
we
about,
raised 1.3. It was all privately raised. Majority of it came through within the community. We had.
so the whole thing was 1.3, the whole thing
It
was
was 1.4.
1.4?
Yes. We raised, like I said, through the community. I was part of fundraising. We did car washes. We raffled off a truck. I curated and held a number of art auctions. And the first weekend that we had, we raised $100,000, which was pretty impressive. We had couple of small, large donations from those who were really invested. But it was really a collective effort.
You had a couple large donations, right?
Couple, yeah, and that really took us over the top.
150,000.
So my thinking is that, the reason it kept coming back to this issue is that because we already intend to make the investment, hopefully, for the ballpark in this area, that this would just make sense to combine them into one facility where lots of people congregate for all sorts of different reasons, as you all have pointed out.
Great idea.
Makes sense to me. Certainly, we'll look at the Bauer property, but I've been there, done that, so I'm just, I kind of like the idea of having everything together. I think in a lot of ways it makes sense, but
In Montauk, is it a town park?
It is a
Town
town park.
maintains
It's
it.
on state land, so the state, I believe, owns the property, but the town of Montauk, town of East Hampton, Montauk, yes, they provide.
They provide the
maintenance.
liability insurance.
They
and
did.
You
They provide
touched
all
on
of
that,
that.
that's
Yep.
significant.
And that was
but-
cleared with the state as
Uh-huh.
well.
Okay.
It's a state right-of-way. It's where the original highway was planned.
It was Robert Moses planning a
Moses.
highway out to the lighthouse, so it's been state property. To get to an issue I'd heard earlier before Councilwoman McNamara about accessibility, that's a good question. And I've been down and canvassed the area of Spionk and Eastport and Remsenburg. I've met a lot of local residents and business owners at Little Gull, the new restaurant at the train station, wonderful couple. Evan across the street with the coffee shop, Chris Krebs with the bike store in Eastport General Store, Mrs. Rayner with the farm stand near Casa Basso, etc. And they're all very encouraging of the project. I'd like to point out that the proposed location is 1 block from the Spionks train station. And I know I've heard Councilman Schneiderman on the radio talk.
Supervisor? That's okay.
Excuse me, pardon me.
Right.
Supervisor Schneiderman on the radio advocating for the use of trains out to the end of East End, Long Island as alternative transportation for work, et cetera, and commuting. Not sure of the train schedule, but the West Hampton Beach train station in Spionk is, I think, 1 stop,
Yeah.
and it's an immediate link. And I remember taking the train out from Penn Station as a kid, and you always heard that Spionk, next stop, West Hampton Beach. So there are alternatives. I know in Montauk, and it's tremendous usage out in the Montauk Park, and a lot of the skaters are coming from Sag Harbor, which is 45 minutes away. They're coming from East Hampton. They're coming from Mastic. They're coming from all over, and they band together and carpool, and they find ways. And as Councilman Martell pointed out, it's a destination. They will find their way. You build it, they're going to get there, and we're seeing that now. So I think that would suffice to say that would happen at Spionk, particularly with a larger park.
Thinking into the future, yeah, we do envision a future with a lot more rail service because of the difficulty with our road infrastructure, and we have plans on meeting more with the Long Island Railroad and getting, one of the reasons why we don't have more trains is because we only have 1 set of tracks. And we're not envisioning 2 sets of tracks, but we are envisioning sidings, parallel tracks, where the empty train could pull over and let the crowded train. Because typically, like in the mornings, everybody's heading east in the afternoon, most people are heading west. So if you could, if you have to get a train from West Hampton to Montauk and then wait for that train to get all the way back to West Hampton before you can run another train, you're looking at a very long period between trains. Whereas if you could run multiple trains out and the returning train could get on a parallel track, then you could keep the trains coming. So, we are looking toward the MTA, Long Island Railroad, to build that infrastructure.
I think Spionk has adjacent tracks
There are a
already.
couple spots.
They're spurs, but
Yeah.
they're for holding and bypass, but they.
There are a
they don't
couple
go over.
sidings. We're
haven't
gonna
been
need some
upgraded
more
either.
to time it right, but I do think that is in the future. Maybe it might be 5 years out or 10 years out, but you're talking about a park that will be here for 30 years.
Yes.
And the fact that it's close to a train station does make it, I think that is a good argument for the location.
You also have a division there between the Eastport Manorville School District
Yep.
and Remsenburg, Spionk, West Hampton. It's right down Phillips Road, which is that road that goes all the way down. Working with the schools, that we have the main attraction right now is the community college pool, which is being underutilized. That we're trying to get there, and we're trying to get people there. And so that's also part of the system, or the schools can bring people, the community center can be bringing people, that we could have a bus system that would allow that to happen. So I think for egress locally through the trains, it's great. And then ultimately, we have local services that will hopefully
The
connect
county's
them.
been moving sort of away from the fixed route bus system for us, where you have just this one bus going in a loop that doesn't have that many people on it, to more of a on-demand type of service. So Legislator Fleming has been very involved with this, micro-transit. So if that continues to evolve, where people could just get on a phone and click a button and have this little shuttle bus come and take them to the park, that would make it a lot more accessible. Jump on with your skateboard, and I do think that's going to happen as well. So having it downtown, which is an advantage, could be overcome by some of these other advances in public transportation.
And traditionally, skaters stay at the park for hours at a time, so that span between train rides would disappear in a second.
Yeah, and that,
Place for
that
pizza.
micro-transit
Yeah.
system is, I think it's like $2.50 or something to get onto things. So
And it'll
the
certainly.
$5 round trip, I don't think is gonna price too many people out.
And I think it'll lend also to the business loop, or the business culture of Spionk as well. I see a couple of things in Little Gull, et cetera, but if and when this park does happen, I think it will have exponential attributes to everybody else in the community in terms of local businesses, whatnot.
Yeah.
Speaking of community, I'm going to turn it over to, from my
You
perspective.
I only
I've talked
scheduled
to-
you guys for a half an
Yep.
hour, so.
To Sean from the local surf
these
shop. We
guys-
have a lot of letters from the community I'd like to share.
Come on, Sean.
Sean Met.
Justin, if you want to come up.
And just.
The county's going to expand the
Step back and-
microtransit into East Hampton and Montauk.
Oh.
So it should be interesting.
I think we hit a lot of the fine points here of this whole mission that we're on today. And this weekend I've had, so anyways, I own Island Surf in West Hampton Beach for the last 24 years. And my wife's a teacher there, and my daughters are in the elementary school and middle school. And of course, they all support this. And at the shop this weekend, I just wanted to put out a little information and talk about it, put up a petition. Can we get some signatures? Do you support a BMX skateboard track at this municipal facility that's being proposed? So we got 120 signatures, and the conversations never ended. I just wanted to do something quick. I don't want to read letters or whatever, but it's just the outpour of emotion and support is overwhelming. And not, of course, baseball and soccer and everything is wonderful, but the inclusivity of skateboarding over the last 24 years that I've been purveying skating and surfing lifestyle. It's unbelievable and how it's grown. And like Councilwoman McNamara was saying about sports, you know, my daughter in middle school was cut from, you know, didn't make the team, and it's just, it goes on from there. And we're just entering middle school sports and in West Hampton Beach. Very,
Our discussion on the way in was
yeah,
exactly
very aggressive and, you know, uber athleticism over there. So it's very difficult to make the team. So now what do we do? So I think being in West Hampton for 24 years, I also had a surf shop in Sag Harbor, which I sold in '07. And that was wonderful because I said, I'm going to sell this, come back to West Hampton Beach and make West Hampton Beach my home, start my family here, and I see the visions West Hampton. It's all come together now, 15 years later. And I see this municipal multi-sport park as definitely, let's put Spionk on the map. Let's get the west end of the town lit up. Let's do something important. It's sort of Spionk, and, you know, being in Sag Harbor for all those years, I went to Southampton College from '88, so I'm a Southampton guy, local dude. And West Hampton sort of, you know, I don't want to say it, but it's you know, I went through a time where it was called Worst Hampton from the TV show in the early 2000s with all those cool guys from the city that were in their Range Rovers and stuff, and, you know. Anyways, I was always like, you know, you guys don't get it. West Hampton's really, really cool, and our beaches are just as good, and the buy-in's really nice. And
Oh, they're better and.
I'd like to rebrand West Hampton and maybe with
Best
this
Hampton.
push to Best
Best
Hampton.
Hampton.
Best.
And I've been pushing, and I own real estate in the commercial zones there in my house, and I'm gonna, you know, my family's gonna be there, and I'll be there beating the drum forever as Best Hampton, and I will defend that and fight, you know, forever for that. But I just see this, the Bauer property, spectacular. I went over the moon. I was like, this is perfect. Again, no fences. We're right here next to the elementary school. It's fully accessible. One problem, it might be too outrageously successful. It might be such a deal that everybody's going to freak out. Like, it's like, we got to tamp this down. We need security. Like, it could be outrageously good, which then sometimes turns bad. But I think, so I've embraced this multi-sport park in Spionk. I think, again, the accessibility to it, we'll get there. My daughters do travel volleyball, we do dance class, we have all these things, we get to it, we carpool. I think the Spionk location will tie in Eastport, Mauritius, West Hampton, Remsenburg. The whole thing, I think, is sort of a beautiful, perfect destination. The more I investigated this, as a local, as you know, someone that loves the sport and all sports. And a big thing, a lot of moms were saying is, can they do with the BMX in the skate park? Can we get a walking track around it? Just somewhere to do, get your laps in. Which I was like, yeah. And then I thought about it. I was like, all right, listen, you bring your kids in.
Steps.
My daughter she's playing softball. My other daughter's skateboarding. My wife, the high school teacher, she's doing laps, she's getting it. You know, we could make this amazing, and I just don't want to beat the drum anymore. I'm going to let this go. But I put it up on Instagram. In April, we went down to the marina, and we got 594 likes and 95 comments, and that really got the ball rolling for this whole idea. So I really think if we include the skating and the BMX element to this facility, it's going to really be unbelievable. And whatever, I'd like to help any way I can to.
You've helped a lot already.
Thanks.
Thanks for that.
I think there's a need, whatever the budget is. Last point, back to, and yes, we're in the East End Little League. We play softball, my 8-year-old, and it's great, but I'm like, why do we have to raise money privately to do this when there's got to be some extra money in the coffers to throw another $1 million at the skate facility and maybe the BMX, and maybe it doesn't have to be as great as Montauk,
but like, why do we have to go out and canvass for this when the tennis court's going and the soccer field's going? Like, again, skateboarding it's in the Olympics.
Understood. I mean, we do like to see public buy-in and
Yes.
contributions, but it is a lot to ask $1 million in public funds to build it. That's a lot of money to raise. And somebody mentioned the Montauk pool earlier, the playhouse. And 20 years they've been trying to raise the money to build that pool. And I think the town just recently committed like $3 million toward that or something like that. So, one of the interesting things about Bauer versus this, and if the town does financially commit money to it, typically we have to borrow money, right? We take out a bond, we pay debt service. To collect the debt service, we go to property taxes. Bless you, Cindy. And nobody wants to see property taxes go up, so it's a challenge. One distinguishing feature between Bauer potentially and this is a CPF park. Now, right now, the CPF doesn't allow CPF funds to be used to build out this type of infrastructure. But it is, with the CPF is almost 25 years old, and there is some discussion to a limited extent of maybe having some CPF funds available for infrastructure for parks, which it might require certain matches and things like that, but that could, because this is a CPF park, if that happens, and that's a big if. I don't know if it will, and a lot of that will come down to Assemblyman Fred Thiel, who was spearheaded the CPF program. We have a tremendous amount of CPF funds. It continues to generate tens of millions, $100 million this year, $100 million last year for open space type of purposes. We bought this property, 165 acres, with CPF funds. It would be nice if a small amount of CPF funds could be used to maintain it and build some limited infrastructure. So I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm hoping it will. And if it does, then this will become a better site for that reason than Bauer, which is not a CPF park. At least I don't believe that was a CPF park, right?
I think that is CPF purchase.
Was that CPF?
Part of it, yes.
CPF
Part of it.
represents what?
Park, not all.
CPF is Community Preservation Fund.
Okay.
All right, so if that's the case, then either one potentially could have a CPF component. Right now, it can't. But, so never mind. No, you really think,
That's
was
exciting.
Bauer CPF? I didn't think it was. I thought it predated it.
No, I think it was CPF.
And the other part, there's an overlap there where it's not CPF.
Some is and some isn't.
isn't.
Yeah.
That's what I
But
understand.
it's important to note, though, what you mentioned with, it eventually goes back to the taxpayers when you take a bond, but also we have to think about the ongoing maintenance costs, operating costs of a facility like this. It's going to require more full-time staff, more equipment, park attendants, people cleaning the restrooms, grooming the fields, security, so.
I'm also asking that some CPF money could be used for that type of park maintenance of CPF parks, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
Additionally to that, though, there is federal money available, particularly to meet some of the sustainability goals. So the overheads, some of the overheads, particularly in power consumption and things like that, there's ways of integrating some of those grants potentially into that. We haven't seen the grant rules yet, but that's what we're hoping will happen. So if we're able to operate a substantial portion of this facility using renewable energy, we can get a fair amount of money back from that.
That'll help keep the
overcome
cost down.
the cost. So really, the idea here was, are we in agreement that this is something we potentially want to do? I'm hearing yes, because I'm always hearing yes in my head, but I'm hearing yes from you guys. The other part of that is that, the design has a lot to do with it, obviously what the costs are, and that's going to take some time to get there. So this is not an overnight thing, but if we if we all come to a consensus that this is something we want to take up, then the next step is we work with Parks and CPF, and hopefully Fred will help us in that regard, because that's a big deal as well, it all is. But there's a lot of things that got to fall into line to make that happen. But if we agree that, yeah, we want to do this, that's the biggest hurdle first, right?
Sure.
And then we move on from that.
So, we're going to take a closer look at Bauer. I think that's important. We'll take another look at that. We have some money we just approved for planning. So Kristen, we can try to look at the layout more carefully and whether we can reserve a space for a future park, BMX park, and then we can figure out, it sounds like the board is committed to creating a facility there. We have to figure out how we're going to pay for it. That's going to be a big question, and whether we're going to phase it in over time, and whether there'll be community contributions and private fundraising drives and things like that. GoFundMe campaigns, whatever it is.
We can do that.
But,
Well, you already proven you have.
so I think the next step is to work on sort of a little more detail on the design and cost estimates. And Darrell, that's something you're working on too,
Yes,
right?
absolutely, yep, we're gonna.
So, but,
Already spoken with engineering, after the resolution passed Tuesday. We actually had a conversation with them yesterday, and we're gonna start, sitting on it and.
and I'm all for creating an incredible facility there. If we can figure out how to pay for it. The western portion of the town needs it, and deserves the same level of facilities as everywhere else. This skate park is pretty far from the Montauk Skate Park, so it would, to create something at that level, at that location, I think would be incredible.
Sure.
Because there are people driving out to Montauk from West Hampton
There sure is.
to access that facility, so it could cut down on traffic, where people wouldn't have to drive as far, and that would be a positive thing too. So.
Yeah, towing skateboarders is not a
It's not very safe.
All right?
Christian, of the fields that you have there, you mentioned a lit field. Which one of the fields were you considering lighting?
Actually, two of them we're considering lighting. It's the back one here, which is a Little League field, and then this front one here, which is a 90 by 90 softball diamond there, so it's more regulation.
Well, baseball field.
Baseball field,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
All right, we need to,
I know it's early.
This was
stage.
all very preliminary.
Yeah.
We do need to revisit what we want to see here, and if it's going to be certain phases. Phase 1 will be this, phase 2 will be this build out. Maybe that's a way to approach it too.
there's no residential close to this.
Across the street, on the other side of Old Country
Old Country
Road
Road.
is a subdivision, Howell Place, I think it's called.
And then Drew Drive is just to the
So
west.
we can push things back if we need to.
Yeah, I would
Create a
certainly
lot of
want to
kids in there,
give it a
too.
good
Create
buffer.
some buffers.
I do know some people who live in that subdivision who are excited to have a park there. Not to say they speak for everybody, but
No,
they like the idea of having a park
There seems to be
there.
a lot
Yeah.
of excitement
Oh, good.
about it.
Well, they'll be able to walk to it, which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as
Any-
far as important as athletic fields are, a skate park is not something, or action park is not something that a school is ever going to fund or build.
Are you planning any pickleball courts? That's.
Well, as we're having these discussions, my mind is running like maybe this is going to be a bigger facility than just getting ball fields. So I think we're going to really have to think
You have
about
no idea. how-
pickleball courts,
how
There's
many-
certainly room for it.
about playgrounds.
Skateboarding is not a trend.
Yeah.
It's not a trend.
So that's why I'm thinking
People keep
phases.
asking for one place with lots of courts because it's such a social sport.
Yeah, that's been, we're kind of getting hit with a lot of different requests right now between the ball fields, pickleball courts, and
The
action.
pickleball courts that
skate
we
parks.
just built at North Sea, something.
We
You
did,
can't get
we
on them
did.
sometimes, but people are driving from all over.
I know the pickleball players and skateboarders get along very, very well.
There are some of us who
A
don't.
new sport.
Correct. They're very similar in their, like.
Pickleboarding, is that a new
Passion.
Yeah. So I think it's a good fit, so I agree.
And the reality is that there's more people living out here, it seems, on a year-round basis. And so since COVID especially, I've seen an explosion in the requests for facilities and people using them. So I think it's good to think about the future and.
All right, well, we'll have time to plan out this facility, but I think there's consensus across the board, the town board, that we want to do a facility there. We want to start planning a facility there and, you know, hopefully, you know, be there when it gets built, so it's exciting.
Yeah, we're looking forward to getting going on the RFP for design, so
Yeah,
we're ready
Yeah,
to go.
let's have
That's
something
good.
to start working with.
all right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for planting the seed.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Mark? Which one?
If
I can do anything.
You're gonna Kristen, still gonna have conversations about
Jake Kelly?
additional
So
little.
many,
Yeah.
it's funny, I was up there for 8 years, I probably had
There's
100
two
employees.
fields.
Yeah, no, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
But I think we have to start publicizing that a little bit.
Okay, yeah, what do you publicizing this?
The additional field, yeah.
Okay.
He waits, he's
All
from
right.
Shelton.
Little League, sit down with you real quick.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you had mentioned that, whenever you. Oh, I heard. Yeah, I didn't get down there
I
till
sold
after.
my store, Island Certified Pioneer, sad.
Yeah, I was like, wait, darn, I missed it.
Or
Yeah, I
07.
know Ian
And
there, she was like.
I was there on the street 7 days a week, skateboarding, hanging out, jobbing every day, provisions.
Well, it was an issue in Sag Harbor, there were, you know, troops of skaters
Teaching lessons.
in village meetings, and, you know, it was a problem for kids.
But I heard that.
They used to park there too.
I mean, it's more fabulous, just to help.
I just think it's, hey, it's bad. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
I'm trying
Where are the two cars? This is one.
Jesse Moore.
So you're saying like this one is
Fireworks in Remsenburg.
this is two. But this one, the bigger
And Daryl shared an article about a project.
When you come back, tracing this piece, it's only going up here.
That's like where, I didn't know.
All right, and then,
There it is, Jay, okay?
thank you. What is that, what is that woman? What is that woman?
That's that survey.
I made it.
Of course you did.
They're there. I look forward to you guys absorbing this.
Of course you did.
So I don't have to deal with that. Yeah. Good morning.
You know when you were talking about historical concepts, everyone wants to see what can be. Did we ever have historical concepts do something of current zoning and what it would be able to build out?
No, because
There's so many uses, but not as being
figured out that 1 unit per 1250 is
Okay,
Oh, let's.
I just want you to take that.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Very much.
Does this have these of your art plans? Is it also going to be asphalt underneath?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the only option we have. Skateboarding's a lot more fun to talk about.
The mood got very somber. Everyone just went, "Ugh."
It's a little slow getting back to the chair.
All right, here's Councilman Bouvier, so why is there this feedback? Charles, you want to turn it down just a little?
My phone was buzzing.
Is that what was doing it? Okay. So we're changing topics. The board over the last few years has been working hard on trying to come up with ideas with the community of Hampton Bays on revitalization of downtown. As you know, we adopted a downtown overlay district after a series of charrettes and surveys and meetings with the community. That zoning has since been annulled, and we have been reapproaching this idea, attending meetings, etc. And we're joined today with Janice Shearer, our Director of Land Management and Development Administrator, or Land Management and Planning, I forget the...
Planning and Development.
Planning and Development Administrator, and Michelangelo Lieberman, who is a Senior Planner, right? And so based on sort of where we are now, as you know, we're trying to address some of the issues that were raised at the court with SECRA and with the firehouse, with the PFAS contamination. We had hired Nelson Pope and Voorhees, and we recently accepted their disengagement from this process. So we're trying to figure out where we are right now. We've heard from the community at the civic meeting some of the things that they want and don't want. I do believe that people do want revitalization, that if they don't, then we're done. And that's fine. We leave things the way they are. We see how things have developed under current zoning, which is from the 1970s, and you end up with properties getting developed, like the movie theater property where you have a large parking area in front of a building, or Liggett's, not really in the style of a typical downtown or village or hamlet center downtown, where you have more of a streetscape, where you walk along a sidewalk and you can go into smaller scale stores where the parking is more, in municipal lots or behind. When we did the surveys, people wanted vibrancy. They seem to want that, more of that small town feeling. So if we get past the point of, do people want revitalization, because I think they do, then it comes down to, well, what is that going to look like? What is it going to feel like? Who is it for? What are the boundaries of it? What are the heights of the buildings? What types of uses? What are they going to look like? So one of the contentious issues has been sewage treatment. People, I believe, seem to agree, based on the civic meeting, that some sort of sewage treatment is needed. It's good for the environment, and it will allow the wet types of uses, but they don't seem to agree on where it should go, right? They feel like the town needs to consider other properties other than just the one near the cemetery that had been looked at. There seems to be concern about the height, the number of stories of that would be allowed, and particularly the density, how many people would live there, how many school-age kids, children would come from a facility from the redevelopment of downtown. They seem to want some sort of performing arts center, movie theater, some kind of cultural venue somewhere in the village. They seem to want it family-friendly, wide sidewalks, bike lanes, vibrant. So I've been trying to figure out where there is consensus and where there's disagreement. People certainly don't want traffic to get any worse. They don't seem to like the idea of the bypass road, so we need to look at other types of traffic mitigation. They seem to want some green spaces and things like that. And, just to correct one of the residents who seems to think that, I or other town board members want to help developers. That's not the case. This has all been about the community, and you can want whatever you want for downtown. It doesn't mean somebody will build anything downtown. So if you do want reinvestment in downtown, most people who would invest would want at least some hope of a reasonable return on that investment, not to lose money on it. So it has to be viable. But, our focus is always on the community. It's on, trying to make sure that our zoning is in line with the desires of the community, not to try to make anybody additional profit. So I want to make that very clear. And it's unfortunate, what happened with the Nelson Pope contract and the language that should have never been there in the first place. So now we have to sort of go, I think, the extra yard to make sure that the community knows that they are driving this process, that this is for them and by them. And it's why I said the other day at the town board meeting that I'm looking to do some listening sessions in the Hampton Bays community. And hopefully others will join us in the planning department. Can sit there as well and participate in this process and try to figure out where that consensus lies and where the disagreement lies and try to resolve some of those issues. So with that, sorry for that long introduction, but I think it needed to be said. Janice, I know you have been working very hard on this, reapproaching this issue. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and I know you've been working on some sort of community survey. So Janice Shear.
Thank you, Supervisor Schneiderman, and good morning, everyone. In order to go forward, I just want to go back a step, although I think the supervisor gave a great synopsis of what's taken place. But just that quick step back in terms of, we have been going through a public process for many, many years now. And so this is a continuation of that public process. We did adopt part of the annulment of the law, the law that we came out with, a form-based code, was predicated on the fact that we had this generic environmental impact statement, and we weren't in, the contention was we weren't in keeping with that. But just going back to that for a moment, we did complete an entire corridor study, do a generic environmental impact statement. We came up with the Hamlet planning criteria. This is part of that whole process. And a lot of what we're doing even again now was covered. So in that, I just want to say that the community goals and objectives of that plan were the same as they are today, which are to create a vibrant community and a vibrant downtown. It is a vibrant community, to facilitate a downtown. I heard a lot of people say, I love to see my neighbor. I love to walk by and know who I'm talking to. And creating that downtown setup where you can interact on the road, you can go up to the park, you can have a cup of coffee, you can, you see that here in this village when we go to lunch or whatever. You see your colleagues, you see people on the street, it's a nice feeling. And that is what we're trying to do here in Hampton Bays. And the words were vibrant, historic, seaside, ecological, green, safe, distinctive. Those were the things that the community at the time, and I think the community today, still thinks that way. I don't think these things are so different.
There was over 1,000 people who participated, if I recall,
There was many people that
Over many
participated
meetings.
over, since,
in that process.
literally, since I've been here in 2003, we've been just sort of culminating all of this information. And so we do have quite a bit of information, but when you look at it across the board and up until the most recent civic meeting, it's not that different. I mean, setting aside the form-based code and the fear of the unknown part, what we're always and every time trying to get to are these things. Hampton Bays Hamlet Center being the locus of community activity. Creating a Hamlet Center is clearly defined and easily recognizable, a destination for both area residents and tourists. People may park and then enjoy the area's commercial and cultural resources as pedestrians. The Hamlet Center thrives with fully occupied storefronts, unique local businesses, sidewalk cafes, parks, and other elements that contribute to street life. Cultural and recreational activities are concentrated in the Hamlet Center. So that's just everything the supervisor was just sort of saying. But this is our comp plan and our directives, right? Like, this was vetted. Then we had a list of category of action items, et cetera, of things that we should do. And some of them are germane to the downtown and trying to figure out, improving the aesthetics, increasing the safety, revitalization, addressing blight, et cetera. So we know where we've been, and I think when it comes to knowing where we're going, the outreach is very important. And again, we can't stress enough, we're not, there is no such thing as neutralizing anyone or anything. The idea, I think, when I finally was able to look at that language, and it's wrong on every level, but the notion was, it really came out of, which none of us are condoning, there's a lot of a vacuum that took place where it was filled with misinformation, right? So we need to correct that misinformation and understand what the community wants to do, what the zoning is just a tool to get there, any zoning. So anything you do, it's just a path forward, and we can do that. So in these listening sessions that the supervisor would like to have in the senior center or elsewhere, we can craft these to be online. We can do it, we can send them via email. We can do QR codes. We can be tech savvy, or we can just have it on a piece of paper. But the back to basics, once again, just to reconfirm what we think we're doing here, which is what I just sort of outlined. And the questions are just sort of, like the supervisor said, do you think there should be some kind of revitalization in the Hamlet Center? I mean, someone just may say no. I don't want anything.
Yeah, we have heard some people say they like it just the way it is.
Right. Do you think, what do you think the Hamlet Center needs? So it's just an open-ended question. Many people think, if the movie theater would just stay, or we had a diner or something else, So there's a lot of answers that, we're not guiding, directing anything, we're just blanks. What do you think? And someone could fill in those blanks. If you don't think any revitalization is necessary, why do you think that? I'm just going over the kind of questions I came up with. I'm happy to edit them or change them. Do you visit Good Ground Park? People may be a resident of Hampton Bays and never have gone to Good Ground Park. That could be possible.
Heard that comment the other day. They walked down Canusio Trail, and it's the first time they've ever
They didn't
seen
know it
the
was
park.
there.
Right, they may not even access the park. Do you think it's easy or difficult to access the park as it's designed? That's just a question to understand, like, we just provided for this very simple access road, but there's clearly like a need for other parking, other access issues related to the park. Do you like the idea of a connecting street that goes from Montauk Highway to Good Ground Park, I'm sorry. Maybe, yes, no, but and then we can kind of find out where people are at. Like, maybe I would like a connector road, but show me what it looks like.
Well-
I would like a connector road that's a simple little cute thing, but I don't want a 5-lane highway.
What's the purpose of that road, I think?
Right, so if we, so do you think like you touched on,
many people did not like the notion of a sewage treatment plant tucked away between the cemetery and the park. Although it's outside of the residential areas, away from everything, that was seen as not a good location. We conduct planning activities in order to understand what the costs would be, what the, issues are. Before we even had a chance to present that, everybody
Sure.
jumped on top of it and sort of said, no, you could never do this. So, okay, well, do you believe it should be in the Hamlet Center proper? Or should the Hamlet Center's sewage treatment needs be dealt with outside the Hamlet Center? And that's a question.
Well, yeah, I think
And
there's,
that has a cost factor as well.
And
right?
that
Because
does
you
have,
would-
and
yeah,
also
because it was a-
topography.
has to be some public education.
Yeah.
The
There's
more it takes to pump it uphill, the
There-
more
and
expensive it
that's,
becomes.
that's a critical point, because to ask somebody the question that they're able to answer from what they think, as opposed to what a study reveals, citing STPs is really critical, as we know, but I'm not sure the public understands that completely.
I don't think so either, but at least we can get some input, and that way we
Somebody
can
had
then
actually said-
understand our data gaps or the missing information.
Somebody has said, basically at the Civic, they were referring to Southampton Village, and, that Southampton Village would not have an STP, but Southampton Village already has one. The hospital has a fairly large STP, and I bike past it whenever I go biking, and it's not a problem. There's no smells or anything. And they're proposing another one, which is relatively near where I live, and I totally support it. But I think there's some misconceptions about STPs, and the modern STPs are not problematic. They're fully enclosed, and
They're fully
but I
enclosed, the
think what-
water that drains out of them is tertiary treated, meaning it's at the level of drinking water standard.
Potability.
either
That's
way,
right.
I'm willing with the STP, and particularly because I think that the site that so far the town has focused on is limited in terms of scalability, if we needed to expand it. I think we should be looking at different sites. I think what the community is looking for us to do the evaluation and figure out the pros and cons of different sites, and then determining what the best site is.
We can do that, well, now we
Like some has
have,
said, put it up by the dump, by the old dump, by the transfer station, but that is a lot of infrastructure to get
and
there.
it's up.
And
You
it's
want
uphill.
gravity and you want
There's
downhill.
a
You want it
lot
to
involved
drain
with
down.
that.
So, but I'm saying, well, let's put it all on the table.
Well, I was going to even suggest
it's
we
not
maybe
something
wanted to
off
do a
the-
water quality, do this as a project where we look at the feasibility of these things as
Yeah,
we're
we look at
suggesting.
different
I
sites.
think,
There-
I think a big issue with everything that has happened from what I've heard, because out of everybody here, I think I am the newest one to this whole process, is people are having a problem with understanding exactly what's being proposed. They're having, and then envisioning it is that next step. And, I heard a lot of people saying, well, they laugh when you say, oh, Hampton Bays is gonna have a walkable downtown, and you're gonna walk down, there's gonna be shops and wide sidewalks and cafes. And they laugh at it because they're not in their head envisioning, right, shops along the park with a wide sidewalk, with a place where you could dine and listen as there's events across the park. In their mind, this is the narrow strip of Main Street, and I understand, having lived here my whole life, when you think of Hampton Bays and you think of Main Street and Hampton Bays, it is very different from other Main Streets, being it is Montauk Highway. And it's, so they can't, it's hard to think about it as, when you see it on a map and you see this giant expanse of land that's here, and you talk to most of the community about Main Street, they focus on this very narrow corridor along Montauk Highway. A lot of people don't even realize how far back these properties go and how deep it is and what you could do along the park edge.
Right, so.
So-
Right, there may be an
But they
opportunity.
also don't understand, as Councilman Bouvier was saying, what modern sewage treatment plants are. So when you go to a civic meeting and you hear somebody that says they're an expert telling you that when it rains, there's going to be raw sewage flooding the streets, it's very daunting to people. I had somebody in my community and I said, you live right next to one on Old Country Road that services Eagles Walk. They never even knew it was there. So I think what Janice was talking about is getting a more, the paper is great, but I think it needs to be more interactive. I think it needs to have hyperlinks to this is what a modern sewage treatment plant looks like, smells like, sounds like, operates, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, we can do that.
people need to understand before they can, they're gonna say no because they don't understand, and I'm not saying that's their fault. It's our job to educate them as to what we're proposing, because right now, they're not seeing it.
Right, so,
Right,
and
and that
remember that.
commercialization, if they think it's just Montauk Highway, they're just gonna think traffic. Like you can't get through downtown Hampton Bays now. Whereas, creating sort of this pedestrian-friendly downtown area between Montauk Highway and Good Ground Park, where you get out of, you park in a municipal lot and you're walking down the street, and there's, ice cream shops or bookstores or, that kind of thing, cafes.
And I get what they're
people-
talking, parking is an issue.
Yeah, I
Parking
think
is an
we have
issue.
to account for the perimeter parking, getting down there, getting out of your car, and experiencing a place on foot or whatever your mobility situation is. So outside of a single occupancy vehicle.
When I first was exposed to this, when I first saw these plans, the plan, exactly as Councilman McNamara is saying, I didn't see it as the main street, although that was concentrated. I was looking at what was meant to go back, that there were talking about roads in between some of these buildings, that it was the responsibility of the building owner if they wanted to do this. There was a long time, it was a 20-year or longer plan. It's an involvement. It wasn't someone coming in to raise everything and redesign it in someone else's image. It was, I thought, a very well laid out, clear explanation of what you can do with your downtown and what you want. And I heard a lot of people saying that they actually loved what was being proposed at that time. But somewhere it gets becomes technically complicated, and that's a difficulty for people to understand. Where the responsibilities lie, how that's done, what does a story mean? I mean, it gets into the weeds at a point where it becomes difficult.
Well, it's interesting because just as being a planner and coming through, like, people don't have this level of concern for any other, we have all kinds of codes that you can, but because it was a visual code and a very prescriptive form-based code where it was like, well, if you're doing this, it has to look like that, and if you're doing that, it has to look like this, it got confusing because it was really highly technically a lot. So in our, to the professionals, it's great because we see it and say, great, if you're doing this I don't have to guess. I don't have to fight you. I don't have to sit here and go, I don't like it, and you say why, and it's arbitrary. It's right there on paper in black and white. But the pattern book kind of did that too. So the form-based code codified the pattern book. Pattern book was probably enough, but we took it that extra step and really said, well, if your building is here and today, and we're trying to fill in this gap, your build-to line is up here, not back here. And it was very prescriptive and very
It's subject to a lot of interpretation by someone listening.
Well, someone who isn't in the business of sitting there reviewing applications and saying, no, wait a minute, your building can't go here, it has to go, you gotta put the addition on this side and not that side, you wouldn't get it. I agree that it was probably too technically complex and a lot of stuff we don't need because when you really look at it, there's not that much that can actually be built, so
Right.
it's almost too much.
That's why I
lot
like your
of the-
picture, this. Started out with why.
Yeah.
A
Do
lot
you
of,
or don't you?
Right.
Sorry.
And a lot of the public input that we had on the original designs was probably about 4 years ago or more, anywhere from 3 to 4 years ago.
Around 2016-ish.
And it was quite extensive, and in my view, there seemed to be a disconnect between some of the folks who are looking at this today and the people who originally, the residents of Hampton Bays who participated in this zoning. And this is just zoning. This is allowing people to come and develop their properties, as is the American way, as per zoning, and to develop a downtown. So I think that one of the faults of this board was that there was a lot of time in between there that caused somewhat of a disconnect between the people who worked on these charrettes and gave input and the residents and where we are now.
And sort of leaving that void to be filled in with, look what they're doing now, and we're doing all
Exactly.
this stuff, that we're technically just setting up the rules for someone to do something. It comes down to, well, what are those
That is
rules
zoning.
going, that's what zoning is. For health, safety, and public welfare, this is the purpose of zoning. Some places don't have zoning, and you have unfettered property rights. We have property rights and we have zoning. So in this case, we did do quite a bit of background here where we did this data gathering. So I wanted to also mention that we had historical concepts which wrote the pattern book, and I'd like to bring them back to sort of, once we kind of get the input and the listening sessions, let's let them draw it out. So we have some actual pictures, not what anybody who owns any property wants to do, but just pure pictures of what they're hearing translated into visual aids, so that we can understand what we mean when we say a connecting road. What are we talking about?
Right, so the community can say, yes,
Yes.
that is what we want.
Right, so this survey
Or
will
no,
kind
that
of
is, we do
evolve
not want
into
that.
something that we can visually go, did we get this right or not? And then we will craft zoning around whatever, in the end, everybody can feel
Can I
fairly
say,
good about.
because I've heard a lot of concerns, obviously, about any increases in population, right? And we had drawn this boundary, from basically from the train station to Good Ground Park, and, from Springville to portions of the, sort of near where the town senior center is. And a lot of it, particularly between the train tracks and Montauk Highway, is already fully developed. There's, the fire department owns 3 of those parcels. We have the post office in another one. So we're counting all this potential residential density that probably wouldn't exist, and it makes it seem like you're gonna get more units than you would. This is gonna be a challenging area I believe, and we had looked at these cross streets, which were then creating crosswalks between the two sides, north and south of the road, which was then impacting traffic on Montauk Highway, which was then necessitating the need for that bypass road. And, I think you have basically 2 opportunities here. You have the, north of the highway, between Good Ground Park and Montauk Highway, where these properties are not, a lot of them are not developed or developed to a small potential of what they can currently be under current zoning. So these properties, you have the opportunity to create something very pedestrian friendly there, where you can get off the highway, park, and walk through this section of downtown that would have very little traffic potentially. I think this other section is more complicated, and maybe as we reapproach this issue, we need to look at it in 2 different sections, because they are very different.
That's fine,
And,
we can change that boundary and just, or
maybe
we can-
A and B.
A and B, and then this is sort of-
A, it's sort of easier to plan, you have less property owners,
Except
to-
here at the intersection of Ponquag, you know, you've got your traditional VB,
Yes.
you know, style, so maybe we would
But
include at
it's,
least that.
And I think that's a really
it's not
important.
up to us.
Well, it is in the sense that we
need the
have been
feedback
looking at this.
first.
Right,
Sure, you
to
need the
s-
feedback.
Right.
To sit
and we
down
need
with,
to have that
what I'm saying
involved.
is, as you sit down with the community to plan the future
That
downtown,
could be one of the questions.
you know, it's more complicated to plan this section that's pretty much fully
Right,
built
but
out.
it's not a lesson to give,
I would say
you need
also-
to receive that
Well,
information.
I'm just saying, as we
Yes.
reapproach this, we might want to break it up into two different sections.
Because they're very different in character, and I would.
One is
agree
pretty
very
much all
with that.
built out, and you're counting all this density that isn't going to happen
Yeah, but see,
in
I
this
don't
area.
want to put my own opinions on top of something.
Sure.
I want to
So
look
I
at
would
something
also
and say,
reference-
ask the right questions. That's why I like this.
Yeah.
You know, and.
Well, I think
and
it's
actually have it
important for
driven
the-
by
So I
the
think we should
feedback.
add a question
And-
about the boundary line.
And whether or
is
not,
what
yeah.
you're saying.
But that evolves out of that. That's,
Sure.
there are steps that
Well,
need to
I'm
go
also
on.
saying, I think we're saying the same thing, John. We're trying to engage the community in planning for its future.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
and this area between the park and the highway, it's easier to engage the community in saying, what could this be? The other area is pretty much fully developed. So you'd have to undo what it is to get it to be something different. So I'm saying that from a community planning exercise, if we could sort of look at these two areas differently, I think it might be helpful,
Well,
because it's
I'm
very
not
complicated.
sure.
I would also use this data gathering as an entry point, because we paid for, you know, to have this done, we engaged the community, they went to 10 different towns, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 other than Hampton Bays, and they looked at Amagansett, Babylon, Bayshore, Bridgehampton, Greenport, Huntington, Northport, Patchogue, Sag Harbor, Sayville, Southampton Village, and West Hampton Beach. And they
group was this?
compared it. This was our historical concepts, which I'm saying, let's get them back to at least do the design work now, like the visual studies.
These were
But
residents.
I'm sorry?
These were in part residents.
These were professionals
Uh-huh.
who did this data gathering for
Okay.
us in advance of the pattern book. And what they found was that Hampton Bays has the lowest building density in the entire study. They only had 1.1 buildings per acre, compared to places that have, you know, the average, you could look at it, but like Amagansett, it's building density is 1.6 buildings for every acre, and then they had more facade frequencies. And you can see, like, there's like visuals here about how the buildings, how we stack up here.
Yeah.
And so I agree, we can look at the phase 1, phase 2, we could do
That's
whatever you
fine
want.
in phases, but I think it has to be done holistically.
Sure, but I'm just
It's
trying to
very-
say that we did do this.
Otherwise,
and we
this
also
is where you
found
start getting
some-
people that
Well,
do this.
that's where you have to maybe
Can
either
I-
change the boundaries or,
Here's what they wrote, here, can I just finish what I'm just saying about this? So here's what people said in the first, well, how we got to this. You know, it's sort of like, well, we need to ask everybody, but we did ask everyone, that's how we have this boundary line the way it is, and that's how come we're talking about it like this. We can ask again, and again, and again, like, we can keep doing this. But here's what they said initially. The strengths were hardworking, informed, diverse group of citizens, invested business owners along Main Street, year-round population. It does say most densely populated area in the Hamptons. I'm not sure if that's actually true, but it does have, you know, extreme density in Hampton Bays, but that's a settlement pattern that predates everyone. Beautiful undeveloped public beaches, fishing port, good ground park, the train station, historic structures, like the Prosper King House and the Lazon Hat Shop, restaurants on the water. Fire department hosts a lot of community events, involves student population, and it says primarily citizens would just like to fix it up and maintain it. Existing challenges: Main Street is not a pleasant place to walk, narrow sidewalks, numerous parking lots with frequent curb cuts and a busy road. Municipal parking along Good Ground Road is underutilized because not many businesses front onto it. Existing business owners do not have any means to improve their properties. Restaurants had a lot of turnover, overcrowded housing. It says poor code enforcement, no main draw to make Main Street a destination.
the sewer, it doesn't even have a sewer system. It says it's operating its maximum capacity, meaning the individual sanitary systems, with no room for expansion. There's no continuity in the street wall form or language of buildings along the street or from one side of the street to the other. Lack of white collar jobs in the area, stormwater runoff and challenges with sanitary have created dead zones, poor water quality. 2 self-contained population groups that do not intermingle. The loudest voices of citizens tend to take over. Opportunities. Opening of Good Ground Park is a catalyst to draw people to Main Street. Existing parking lots in general are underutilized. There is a need for affordable housing and entry level for professionals. That may be a bone of contention. Many people said they didn't want any more affordable housing. One of the questions in the survey is, are you concerned about affordability for yourself or others in your family? So you'll get responses, not concerned, somewhat concerned, very concerned, or extremely concerned. There's a need for more family-oriented entertainment. There's a need to improve stormwater quality. This was all the data gathering that I went to. We had public listening sessions. So I'm just saying, all this came out of that. It does reference a motivated developer bought a large number of parcels along Main Street. There's a great deal of drive-through traffic on Main Street, could be captured as customers. Increased Long Island Railroad services could make commuting more attractive and bring more tourism. Increased connection to water and beaches via bike trails and community shuttles, etc. Redevelopment of Canoe Place Inn may bring more visitors in the future. There's a need for mid-level shopping accessible to the population. Tax incentives to redevelop motels for increased tourism should be implemented. There's a need for a boutique hotel on Main Street to bring more tourism. There's a need for public art space, art gallery, theater. The current block structure is quite large, so is there an opportunity for new north-south streets or pedestrian cut-throughs to better connect Good Ground Road to Good Ground Park. There's a need for an effort to preserve the history of Hampton Bays. There's an opportunity to introduce pocket neighborhoods with small, affordable housing or incubator shops. The area is uniquely poised as an ecotourism attraction with water, parkland, and local colleges, farmers market, demonstration gardens, rain gardens. So it was really this that came out of the last round, where we kind of all get that.
Then again, that's a good list of people to say, do you agree with this sentence? Do you
Right,
agree with
this is what I'm
sentence?
saying, like, we're
Yes
saying
or
it all,
no?
we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We got the wheel, we have the whole car.
We can double check
Oh,
and
we
make
can
sure
double-
that's still what the community wants.
So, right.
Councilwoman?
Yeah, sorry about that, but thank
So
you.
the reason why we could talk about the planning and how we're breaking things out and how we're doing things for hours. The reason why I asked to have this discussion today was to really, Supervisor, you talked about having these listening sessions from 4 to 6 on Thursdays. I really wanted to just, like I said, we can hash out what could be, what should be, how it could be. I would like to know going forward how we're going to have those sessions, who's going to be present, and how we're going to extract that data and make sure that when you go and you spend however many of these sessions you have listening to people, and you say, well, that's not what I heard from the people, they told me, you're not brought back to, well, how do we know that's what you were told? Because that's not what anybody's saying at a public meeting. So it has to be productive, and it has to be, so I think the survey is a great idea. I think that list of things that you just gave should be attached to the survey. And what in this list do you not agree with? I mean, you can make it that simple. And why don't you agree with that?
Right.
Because that
I
lists
think-
almost everything that's in the survey.
Well,
But I
right,
just
that's what I was
wanna
trying
know,
to say,
are
like,
we-
we've asked
Are you
this
going
before.
every Thursday? Are we rotating through and each taking a Thursday to accompany you?
You are welcome to, and I'm gonna look at it almost like I'm having office hours in Hampton Bays
I
from
just
4 to
don't want it
6
to
on
be where we
Thursdays.
have to
Needs to
set
be-
up.
Wait, hold on, I
set up-
can't have 3 people talking.
Set up a video. tape.
I was
You're
asking
not
a
hearing what she's
question that I
saying.
was answering, and then suddenly 2 people were talking while I was talking, so. So I said, I'm approaching it as if I'm having office hours in Hampton Bays from 4 to 6 on Thursday, starting in October. And you're welcome to come. You can rotate through, we can't have 3 of us there without noticing it as a public meeting. If you want to have some noticed public meetings, what I'm trying to do is just get a sense, and anybody is invited to come from the public, is, where there is general consensus, where there's agreement, where there is disagreement. So, I can better understand what the community wants, so I, as a representative, can work with the town board and the planning department on reapproaching this revitalization issue. If you want to do something different, at some point, I think we should have town board meetings in Hampton Bays, and we could focus those meetings on different topics. One meeting could be on the sewers. One meeting could be on this Park Avenue idea of this connector road. Another meeting could be on a performing arts center, whatever it might be, and how to make those things happen. I think in terms of my Thursdays in Hampton Bays, I want to sort of keep it open-ended. I want to have some maps that people can draw on, some pictures that they can respond to, some surveys. But I'm just basically looking for general areas of agreement and where those areas of disagreement are, so that I can help report back to you guys, at least.
See, I'm sorry, but that's what I don't want.
That's my job.
It's also our job.
Then too, yeah.
And have somebody else listening to that, so that we have a clear understanding of what's going on. I mean, I'd love to have this in front of people again, because I walked away many years ago feeling that the entire community was in agreement with this. This came out of their mouths, as I understood it, and that's where we moved forward from that point.
Well, I think then there was a lot of fear and consternation about, the form-based code after that, because it was like, did you know the town is gonna put 4 and 5-story buildings here? And that was never, it was sort of like, if you were gonna do this, then here's how it should look. If you're gonna do that, then here's how it should look. At no time was there ever 4 and 5-story buildings. There was, up to 3 with step backs to allow for pitched roofs, where the overall height was still the same as VB. That still doesn't translate right.
And I understand.
So I would love, with your permission, the historical concepts to take the input, take this input, take all the survey input, take anything you hear from anyone, all of us, and put it into visual format, so we can all see what we're talking about here. Because we can talk and talk and talk, and then we can get votes going, this or that, that type of thing. But we're never going to get everyone 100% happy, right? We know this.
Well,
But
look,
what
this
are we
is my
going to
problem.
how are we going to lay out any future
This is my
development?
problem with this, is
Okay.
that you guys did such phenomenal work so many years ago. The community, I got the impression, and I think most people got the impression, yeah, we want to go forward with this. And then, for all the reasons you just stated, there's some confusion that may have caused some other issues. I want to know if this first question still applies, and if it is a resounding yes or no. Otherwise, all the rest of this we're just going through actions.
Right.
This is the first question that needs to be answered.
But that might be a no based on what they, in their mind, think
And
we're proposing.
Exactly, and that's why this kind of stuff, and your idea of attaching that, and people should be reminded, it was many years ago, and a lot of people may not have even remember that. I mean, there is a lot of work done. I thought it was good work. I thought the community wanted it. If the community doesn't want it, I don't want to go through a whole exercise again to try to convince people of something that they've already been convinced. I don't know if the train's left the station
I just
or not.
I just don't want them thinking they're saying no to a sewage treatment plant with raw sewage running down the road and 5-story buildings and things that we're not even proposing.
Right.
No,
It was
I agree.
Something got lost
There's a lot
somewhere.
of really good people in Hampton Bays, and I think they deserve a little bit better than just being circulated all the time. They answered that. I'd like to hear this answer. I'd like your survey. I'd certainly like to know what the majority of the town wants, because I remember having all these conversations, and they were really good meetings in Hampton Bays. People came up and asked really good, legitimate questions, and we had good, legitimate answers for them at the time, I thought. So I really understand what's changed in that regard, but I think we need to take stock of that and see if something is different in how people are perceiving what they want for their community that they live in, with all their legitimate concerns that
Sure,
every
and I don't think
community
anyone
has.
disagrees with you. I
Can we
think
do
also
an-
the fear of the unknown, and all I ever heard was, show me the plan, and it's sort of like, do I show you the zoning and the plan for all kinds of properties here? We don't know necessarily what people are going to propose. We set the ground rules, and then they come in with something, so it's very difficult for us to, it's not a PDD. If it was, this would have all been done already. It would have been so much easier, in all honesty. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. It's not that way, where we knew what the plan was, we zone all around it, we extract all the public benefits, and it's known. Here is sort of a bit of a choose your own adventure thing. Now, we're getting a lot of pushback that nobody wants that. They want to understand, like, well, what would it allow? What is it really going to look like and be like? And so I think the picture's worth 1,000 words thing is really the best place we can get to. And then whoever owns this can look at those pictures, can look at the potential and say, I want it, I don't want it, I'm gonna sell it, it doesn't work for me. That's not our concern. We never get in the middle of that. That's just not our problem.
So Janice, I think John is perfectly correct that back when you had these prior to me coming on the board, 2018, 2019, a majority of the people who came to those meetings certainly wanted improvements to downtown Hampton Bays. Whatever that number was, pick it out of your hat. If it was 92%, 95%, it was certainly a majority. I think that majority may be a little less now, but I still think a solid majority wants to see some improvement in Hampton Bays. There was a little disconnect between what was said at meetings and what really got into the form-based code. There was a little misunderstandings as far as what those limitations were.
Sure.
I think the 3.5, 4-story building debate, I think now that we're post-COVID and things have changed, the traffic patterns have really gotten to everybody in Hampton Bays. So traffic, when you mention more apartments and more density, means more traffic. So we have that problem going on. So we need to address that. We did talk about, I think, Supervisor, you brought this up in 18, that the park was going to be the new Main Street. So whether that was a pedestrian Main Street or another shortcut to somewhere, I think we need to clarify that.
Okay.
So that one road that goes in may be a one-way road in and an exit down at the end of the park, because the park could use another exit.
Right.
Okay, certain things like that. We have to nail down some of the specifics that we have control over before we entertain a developer.
100%.
So I think we certainly have to, look at that form-based code again. On the sewer treatment plant, I don't think of the village of Hampton Bays is just from Springville to Pompano. Like, I really think it goes from the diner to the train bridge, or take it as far as you want. And the fact that we used to have a corridor plan and now it's just a downtown overlay district, we were putting a lot of zoning into that small area, a lot of density into the area. So the density has to be looked at, and I would like to be able to investigate it, and you probably already did this already, because we've talked about it, why certain sites for the sewage treatment plant weren't good for us. Because with the development at the diner, it might be wise to include that in the plan now.
I agree.
So,
I think we could actually, we should look at this in a bigger picture way, as people have wanted us to. We kind of pulled out the corridor from we had the corridor, and we kind of zoomed in on the Main Street, because that's sort of what all the comp plan told us to do. We understand that we need to sort of put it back in its context, and so we can do that, no problem. But when you put it back in its context and you look at what you're saying, there are other opportunities there, and this was a very constrained site for the STP, and it did
in and of itself limit the density there, which is fine, and
Which it
anything
has
else could too. Your zoning would limit the density as well, but you may be able to capture, if you move it in a different location, like you said, other development sites or existing residential would really be a home run, because that's what's contributing to the, collapse of Shinnecock Bay and Diana Bay and such.
So when we ask people, sort of, do you like downtown the way it is? I think there's two pieces to that. So one is, okay, what is downtown? Like, where is it? Like, how many residential units are there? What type of commercial is there? Is there a diversity? Is it meeting the needs of the public? How many empty storefronts are there? I think sort of understanding what downtown is and where the boundaries of downtown are. But then also, we're sort of asking, if we do nothing to change the zoning, how will downtown likely evolve over time under current zoning? When I look at downtown and I see, the main intersection, which is really, Ponquag and Montauk Highway, Squiretown on the other side. But there you see like the beginnings of that historic downtown, where Gators is, and Dunbar's. It starts to move out from there. It's sort of in all directions, but then that development pattern is quickly interrupted, right? So you have, these, instead of the stores on Main Street, you have the parking lots, and I feel like there's a different development pattern that was sort of dictated by this current zoning. So there's things that are built pre-zoning and those that are post-zoning, and we could sort of, I think, try to conceptualize, if people were to invest in their properties under current zoning, what would downtown end up being? Because I think that's a fundamental question, not just do you like it the way it is, do you like it the way it will be if we don't do anything? And it may be that, people won't invest under current zoning because it doesn't make sense, or they will.
How will it be? Because it's been the same since I was a kid.
Well, they haven't
It hasn't
invested.
changed.
Right, there's been no investment.
And I think that's what
fundamentally.
some people, is comforting to some people, is it hasn't changed in forever, and they don't.
Well,
want
and
to
then if
Well,
they,
you
if,
don't want to be, you got to be careful about having leading questions.
Well, that's why I tried to make it.
that is
Yeah.
not my
I'm
sense in
not
the community,
leading
is that people do want that vibrancy and that, diversity and different things, more of the boutique shops and the outdoor cafes and the wider sidewalks. If they don't, that's okay. We don't have to change the zoning. We can leave it just the way it is. And people may invest, people may not. It depends, I guess, on economic factors. But if they did invest, it would be good to know what would it end up looking like. Will there be a sense of place?
Say, I want to build a building here, and we can't say no.
Can't say
We can
no.
only say, well, it's got to be this way or that way.
So the buildings will be
Saying just
separated and
no
set back
means
and.
taking the property from them. So you can't just say no. We have to say,
So I think that's part of our analysis. That would be helpful to people when we ask them, are they happy with things the way they are? We also sort of say, would you be happy with things the way they will be if we don't change zoning? So the
would
whole
you
idea of
want me to
changing
show
zoning.
You actually, we never did it because it seemed to be slightly an expenditure that no one was, necessarily. We have in our secret the alternatives, and we can include that.
Well, if we're
as an
going to use,
alternative, as
if
of
we're
right
going to use
alternative.
historic concepts
Yeah.
to sort of lay out what it could look like with new zoning, I think we should use them to also lay out what it could look like if we don't change the zoning. Because you have this development pattern creeping into downtown that is more like what you'd expect along a major highway, not a sort of hamlet.
Right, you get like
Hampton Hamlet.
standalones with
their own parking, kind of isolated, the best we
Right.
can get.
So you lose, you gradually lose your sense of place.
Right.
And you could be anywhere.
It's own village business. And then the other thing was, it was asking us, how you want to see, if you were at Good Ground Park, looking back.
So that identity, that unique identity is, I think, in danger. It's, a lot of it's already, it's lost a lot of its potential. But if we leave things just the way they are, will that continue? And are we going to see more development like we've seen, and I have no problem with Liggett's, but that type of development pattern, where you have the big parking lot in the front along Main Street, and the buildings are set back, and the type of uses along, that to me is, highway development. That could be Comac, that could be anywhere. Jericho Turnpike, not necessarily what people may think of as a historic Hamlet Center. Very different than, let's say, downtown Bridgehampton or Watermill, or really anywhere.
So as we go forward, we can
East
add,
Quad,
I
yeah.
can speak to them and see if we can get some of this or that type of stuff, so that we understand where we are today, what the possibilities are under the current zone, and then what, the possibilities are if you want X, Y, and Z. If you think that it's worth having, a connector road with shops so that you have somewhere to walk to on your way to the park, let's say, or something along those lines.
It's an evolving image, and that needs to be conveyed, that an agreement to that it's not happening overnight. I can't, just trying to think in my head how many times I had spoken with people who thought that our whole purpose was to raise everything and rebuild. And trying to even explain that concept, that it's the owner of that property that under this implementation of this particular type of zoning, they are allowed to do X, Y, and Z. And that all contributes together, that contributes to a change in the way this street front looks and the way Hampton Bays looks. And that, I think, was what most people agreed to and what they wanted. Where it starts to fall apart is in the implementation of that and the understanding that this is a long-term opportunity for a town to change itself as it wishes over time without having anything imposed on them, and no bulldozers, no mandates. This just gives people who live there the opportunity to do something that they want to do, that they said that they want to do. How can we help?
Right. If you own a piece of property here, and let's say this is our only option to get out from this, Good Ground Access Park, and we want to, and let's just pretend that all the traffic worked out and no problem. What if somebody comes in tomorrow planning and says, I want to put a building right there in the middle of the connector spot?
We can't stop them.
We can't, so this is like, there's only so much time that you have to keep doing this without, someone
Until it
eventually is
collapses,
gonna
right.
come in
Yes.
and wanna do something, and it could be in a critical spot right where we wanna
That's
put
why
the road.
we can look at what is likely to get built under current zoning.
Right,
But I also think.
But it needs to be made real.
sure,
to someone.
and I think
It's not
having
Well, some
historical
drawings
Not a
and-
concepts,
worst-case scenario.
Yeah,
not a
right,
worst-case
right, right.
scenario, and to scare people, I think we're
gotta
past
be
like the fear
realistic.
of the unknown.
But
We
I
should
also,
just understand,
Not
if everybody
someone-
says
I
we
also
love
think-
the as-of-right thing,
we've heard this argument that you can't just build the retail, it won't survive. You need the foot traffic, you need some residential, preferably above the retail so that there, people are walking around. But I think the two questions there are how much, like how many people, how many units, and who are they for? Are they for our kids who are, can't afford to live in the area?
Right.
Or these new people coming in? I think that's a question that's gonna have to get answered too. Who are we building the residential
Well, I would
for?
love
Is it
to-
gonna be for school teachers and nurses and essential workers? Or are these gonna be summer residents? I think this really has to sort of get narrowed down. Are they gonna be low income, are they gonna be moderate income, or, those
there are
questions.
some
We
questions that don't really
initially,
answer.
in this form-based code, we added a provision in there for affordability, and there was a lot of, like, we
It
don't
didn't end
need
up
any
in the
more
final.
affordable housing, but the purpose of doing that was so that people in the community didn't get immediately priced out by Manhattan,
Well, it's
buying
sort
every
of
one of
what
these
you mean by
units.
affordability. I think what people, they want places for the, the people.
Essential services.
Yeah, people who work, who drive the ambulances, the EMTs, the fire, the school teachers, the social workers, sort of like the.
Nurses, doctors.
Exactly, the people that we need for our community to function. They need housing. And so I think we have to sort of figure that out, so that how do we make, if there are going to be apartments downtown, that these aren't summer apartments, these are for essential workers.
Right.
As we talk about increasing train service, it's the perfect location for them to get on a train and get out to East Hampton to teach, or get to
Exactly.
Southampton to work in the hospital. It's.
Well,
just a
that was
great
where we went
location.
into it thinking that we would have a set aside for
Yeah.
affordable housing. Now, would this mean, there's public-private partnerships involved where
No,
we?
It's really, this is
end
the
up,
question of who,
you know.
not just what, but who. Who are these people?
It's impossible for someone to answer that, though, in the sense that we intend it to be this way.
We
Well,
gotta
and
And
also
someone
under
says that's not
housing
true,
law-
it could be anyone, because.
Maybe we can have preferences.
Discriminate.
Under housing law,
Maybe we
you-
can. I would
maybe
love
we
to
can.
see that. That would be great.
Under housing law, you can't.
But what if you
But
use,
may be
our
able to
our
do with our-
community?
State and
Yeah.
Right.
federal funds, you
Yeah.
cannot.
But if we
But
used
with
our
ours,
own.
we may be able to do that.
Right.
Community housing
33-8.
funds will be able to give deference to local as defined in the state law.
And it's
So
defined
there
in
is
the
a
plan.
path for that, but I don't want, the
Well,
state
if there's no
community-
subsidy here and you have a private developer, who's building some of this, and you say, look, this is the requirement, that these units are only available to essential workers.
Right.
Can you do that? I don't know. We can explore that.
Yeah, but to
Question-
me, that this all
question
starts
two.
with what the community actually wants. And
Right.
I'm
Question
always
two.
back to that circle.
That's question two.
Question two.
Do the people of Hampton Bays want to see some kind of revitalization?
That's
in the
question
Hamlet
two,
Center?
yeah.
And I know, that's why I'm saying question two. And, we know this, we've been doing this. We can kind of run out ahead and have these conversations, but that, like Councilman Bouvier said, is the essential question, at least for me.
Well, if.
Does the community want it? I believe they do, although I've also heard otherwise, and not everyone is going to be 100% agreement on.
It's not
pretty
the
much
first
anything
time,
in zoning
great
anywhere.
plan just didn't happen, and we understand that. I mean, these things have happened over the years, and, you see an opportunity, you try to seize an opportunity and say this or that, we can do this, and then in the end, there's fear, when there's misunderstanding, but most of all, how much, density and building heights, those are after effects of like what we're trying to like get at least the puzzle pieces, like, okay, a road, we can treat our waste, we can deal with parking, we have the train, the basics, and then we can, continue to argue over how many. Right now, we definitely have to set you're not going to go from VB to, like 5-acre zoning or something, right? You're gonna say, this is still a Hamlet Center, we're still gonna go with something that's reminiscent of a Hamlet Center. We're not gonna say, we're gonna upzone the whole thing so you get 2 houses and call it a day. You're gonna do
But
something that makes
zoning is
sense in a
hard
Hamlet
for
Center.
Anybody to understand. It's hard, and it's hard to explain this to people. It's difficult to explain what it does and what it doesn't do. I get that.
Right.
It's a very hard and very complex subject that sometimes, we, in the course of a day, it'll just come out of our mouths, but, you have to take a breath and people need to really understand that process, the intricacy of that process so that it's clear what is going to be done or what can be done and what can't be done, which is equally important.
Exactly.
Well,
So
if-
we can do that and make it real clear and very,
And this
in
is
its
for a
context
community.
and
What
then
do
in
you
the
guys
wider
want?
sense.
Well, that's what I think the planning department really was trying to do. You know, the zoning is about.
I'm not blaming
Well, let me just say what I was
We're
gonna
not
say,
taking
so.
any blame. It's okay, I mean, we're not feeling
Let me
blamed.
let me
I
just
should
share
say.
my thought here, so, you know, because zoning ideas have changed through the years. And typical zoning, traditional zoning, that I think like you're referring to, was basically, we will put a table together of the types of uses that you're allowed in this zone. We're gonna tell you how tall it can be and how far from the property lines it can be. And then the property owners will then apply. Sometimes they'll go and get variances for things, but that's basically how zoning was approached. The form-based code is something different because it was more focused on how things looked and felt. It was about style and,
It was an aesthetic, and I understand.
It was
that,
driven
but my
by
point is
that
you need to
feeling.
make that, what you're saying here, presented in an understandable way to the very people that are going to act under that zoning, who own those properties, so that they know what they.
Sure, I mean, you can say it's VB, and here you gotta follow the pattern book, and, you know, look at the densities under VB today, and maybe add some units to the point where you feel it's good, or everyone agrees, and you don't have to do anything, you can keep it VB, you know, or you can say, well, it's really still the downtown overlay district. We still want to, it's, and mind you, that was an opt-in, optional overlay district. So it's even more of a, you know, hit when you think of like, the big bad town is doing something, it was an option that
This-
someone could exercise or not exercise. You
This
just
is all
had an
to
option.
inform the owners, the residents of Hampton Bays, their options. That's, in my view, it allows them to make an informed decision as to whether they want to do this in the first place or not.
Right, well, this
That's
is sort
where
of the
I'm at.
groundwork information of like, let's reconfirm everything we said. Like, a lot has happened, it's been 20 years of this, let's just reconfirm some basics. Then, let's get historical concepts to draw some stuff up. Then, let's look at it, see how everyone feels about it. I hate it, I love it, it's too much, it's too little, whatever. Then we'll, you know, it's an iterative process. And I think we tried to do that, but in the end, it fell short because it's just too much. So let's like wind it back to figure out what is the right fit, the Goldilocks thing here that everybody can agree on or not. And then, you know, we can go from there. But I think it's important, you know, what we all heard was a lot of anger, a lot of fear, a lot of frustration. And a lot of it stems from misinformation in my view, but be that as it may, you know, we're just trying to understand. I think in the end, when you have nothing to fear, you don't really have to fight. You can just understand. Like, we're involving people so that they can understand and give us their feedback and influence the process in a positive
Can I
way.
just say that I think that people of Hampton Bays are all well-intentioned.
Me too.
Everybody has the best interests of the community in mind. They may have different concepts of what the future Hampton Bays should look like, but I think they all love Hampton Bays. They all care deeply about the community. And, you know, it's our job to see if we can find that consensus. And if we can't, we can't. But it's really important that everybody feels that they have played a part in sort of rethinking the future. And if they want it just the way it is, that's fine too. That's okay. And if they want it to change, that they have helped lay the groundwork for that type of change. So,
There was just, you know, the way it is, with the caveat that people do have the ability to come in and put in a site plan application for something tomorrow. Like, with their own sewage treat, their own septic, their own everything. So the way it is today may not be the way it is tomorrow under VB right now. Just from that,
Well,
like,
that's
I
what we
read
have to
something
help the
that was
community
put out there
understand.
that said this is open space. This is not open space. This is private property. So I just want to make that very clear. The Good Ground Park is open space, 38 acres that could have all been developed, and that was a fight that was fought for many years, and
This is all commercially zoned.
this is commercially zoned, private property. This
Yeah,
is
but
not open
Her point
space.
is that this could have been just as well.
Well, that was residentially zoned, but that's R40, but that could have been 80 homes up here.
Right.
Right.
It
But I'm
didn't
just
end
saying
up as a
that's the
park.
open
Ended up as
space.
a park, that's
The,
open
the,
space.
It ended up-
between the park and Hot Market
But it was
Highway is
always-
not
Long
when-
open space.
time to make that happen.
When this park was created, the idea was to add vibrancy to downtown, that this was going to help downtown, having this park. And this idea of sort of connecting the two, Good Ground Park and downtown, in a more meaningful way. It is, connected by Squiretown. That's sort of the only way in, other than the pedestrian way through the Vince Canuzio Trail. But the idea that there might be other connectors between downtown and Good Ground Park has always been in the plans. There was plans for an esplanade, as Deputy Supervisor Zapone refers to it, connecting it. That would be a wide walkway. But, I think the interaction between Good Ground Park and downtown was always meant to help support the retail businesses, the restaurants, the stores in downtown, and add sort of vibrancy. But right now, they're sort of cut off.
They're cut off, and the block lengths, like just in the pattern book thing they looked at, well, it's
I remember
over,
that
it was
distinctly.
1875, 1,875 feet to go from one block to another. The average is like, you want to go
About a quarter mile.
like, 400 feet.
Well, and we had
600
talked
feet.
about-
Huntington is 250 feet between blocks. So we were trying to add more block lengths in that whole, remember the form-based code had that whole, the edge, the transition
Right,
zone,
and the
trying
separation,
to
the
do
ability
that.
But with
between
Good Ground
buildings.
Park, there was this idea in the form-based code that there'd be these little shops fronting the park where people
Right.
could walk and get an ice cream cone or whatever it might
Right.
be.
So that was one of the questions. When you're at Good Ground Park and you're looking back, do you want to see the back of the building with the parking? Or are you looking to see, buildings? Or do you just want a buffer and we block it off? But then you're losing something. If everybody says we just want to block it off, that's still, in my opinion, not good planning.
Well, I
Yeah.
think that people need to see what it would look like in the different scenarios.
Exactly, and that's why I think in the
How would the
end, how
park
could you
feel?
choose? How could you say, I want to, nobody's going to say, I just want to see a parking lot in the back of the building.
Your kids are at the
But-
playground at Good Ground Park, are you enjoying a concert? Do you want something nearby that you can walk to purchase a sandwich or whatever it
Right.
might be? That's a
Right,
a
it
big
does
question
ask,
for the public.
it does ask what types of buildings appeal to you in a downtown setting. We have to remember, this is a downtown setting. So a single-story, two-story, peak or flat, three-story, peak or flat, a mix of all three, only one and two with maybe a limit of three where appropriate, but people would say, well, I don't know what that means.
I think they need to see
So they need to
pictures.
see it. And then, so what I was, to
I
Councilwoman
remember we
McNamara's
had
point, we can
examples.
hyperlink to all of these.
And
You
it's
had
just three-story
examples.
buildings on West Hampton Beach, Main Street.
Right here, Greenport, we
Sag
did all
Harbor,
this.
long stretches of three-story
Yeah,
buildings.
and there were photos, and there
Yeah.
were renderings of exactly what that could and could not look like.
Right, and
There
then
was a
you could
lot
say
of
none
work
of
done
these.
on that.
We did, but
We have to- We have to go back.
we have to go back. And, so it asks these questions, do you think Good Ground Road should be considered in planning efforts to revitalize the Hampton Center? That goes back to what you just said, Supervisor, that maybe we don't need to even think about this right now. Maybe we'll just hyper-focus on this, or maybe we do need to think about it, but it's bigger. It's
Yeah, I
actually
think that
more.
But-
idea that, sorry, John, go ahead.
Just to reiterate, that you can't create divisions among the people in Hampton Bays.
I'm not
Because-
trying to.
No,
Oh.
I'm not saying you, I mean
Okay.
in general, because when people start to talk about one area and another area and another area, you get people that don't quite understand
I
it.
think-
It's like what happened with the STP, you know, it's like, well, I'm over here, why aren't I included? That, you know, the way it's done, the process of bringing that forward is really critical, is equal to the information you're trying to impart. I get concerned about that, kind of, you know, I see people being upset, you know.
Well,
And I also see people saying, oh, well, now you're just doing this little area because you don't want us to know what the density is gonna be in that other area. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
I think you need to look at the bigger picture, the whole
We're
picture.
absolutely plugging it back
Yeah.
into the context of
whole-
the
Yeah.
It
corridor
just has to
study, so we
be,
can
I think it has
understand
to
it
be
all.
based on reality, right? So that area between the train station and Montauk Highway, like if you're imagining this new street across from the train station of all these little shops and things that you can walk along a broad sidewalk, it's easy to imagine, but, you know, the fire department owns 3 of those lots. The post office is another one of those lots. There aren't, you know, that idea of this long stretch of, you know, retail boutique stores is just really, not really a practical reality. And whether we want to put it into a plan, knowing that it's not going to happen, and you don't have the buy-in from property owners.
No, I think it
is-
makes it that much better
then
when it's
you
in the
li-
plan and you see what it is.
Well, then you end up with secrets saying, okay, we got to calculate the residential off of all these properties that aren't going to be developed residentially.
I agree. I think
I
we should
think you're
just
just
focus between
creating a-
here and maybe down further if you want to. We can expand out, but you really have to define what is the downtown. And is this, even though they're both still in the downtown, these two areas are very different. So that's, I
And
think, what you're trying to get at.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but again, getting back to the methodology that you're imparting that information is really, really critical.
Okay.
Of course.
You know, and go back to, I think, the word holistic is really important here. How that's put in context with what you're trying to describe is really critical to people's attitudes and what they're hearing. Because they're looking at it from their point of view, from where they live. I understand that. We had the same issue in West Hampton Beach. You know, where people are, it's to them that's more relevant, and how they fit into the entire scheme of things is important. What they can and cannot do. These are residences, and there's a lot of truth in what the supervisor's saying. There's a lot of truth in what we're all saying here, but we're not coming up with a cohesive.
Well,
that's why
our strategy is to have.
That's why I like this. When you're calculating this artificial density and you're, you know, for the maximum build-out of an area, and you know the fire department isn't building housing on their 3 properties, you know, the post office, why are we counting the density?
We shouldn't be, and it
And-
was this whole build scenario to
We're
do this
creating an
hypothetical
artificial
thing.
sense
That's not
of
real.
how many
And I think
people.
you need to make sure that that is understood when it's being presented.
The whole hypothetical thing is gonna be out
That's
the
why I
window.
really
Let's
think it's
figure out what
important.
we're doing.
I'm not saying we shouldn't look at this whole boundary or change the boundary. I'm just saying we should look at it differently, because this is largely all built out,
Well, I think
and
the
this is
community
largely
will
not
help
built
make
out.
that decision.
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah,
can,
but
we can
it's
sit
not.
here and we can discuss this for another 6 hours. It's
We
just
could.
need to
We
start
could keep going
listening
forever.
To the
Question
community
number 2.
and then come back after
Absolutely,
we've
yes.
listened.
Seriously, question number 2. We shouldn't be making decisions before we go out to the community on this and
Yeah.
other things.
Well, could we
And
agree
thank
that
you.
we
That's
want
a simple
historical
way of what I'm
concepts to
trying to
well, I just want to know whether or not I'm engaging them to just do these patterns or not. These, like, imagery for us. We need some, like, you know, and the fact that they have all this knowledge they did all the data gathering, they did the pattern book. I feel like they're uniquely qualified to now just do the rest of this, which we probably should have done in the first place, which was draw it out and let's then see what we're looking at.
Before asking question number 2, maybe they should have, as John pointed out, have a little bit better understanding of what revitalization means. And historical concepts might be able to provide that.
As I think like I said, I think that question might be a no based on what they think they are saying no
Right.
to.
as opposed to what
What
they
they
were
actually
informed
need.
of.
Okay.
And I think what I'm saying is, we have to be willing to modify the boundaries. To say this is the area that we considered the first go-around isn't necessarily exactly the area that we'll consider. We are open to moving those lines.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
I don't think you phrase it that way.
Yeah, I don't think, if we cut out half the town now. I
Well,
mean,
that was the
people are
whole point
excited
of
about-
keeping it all, because we thought a rising tide lifts all boats, we're doing it for this
Right.
whole area. We were trying to get the public interest in a private piece of land to put an STP on something that we didn't even have any public interest in. And we had a willing person to let us look at it at least, but maybe that's clearly not, we're on
All I'm
the
saying
wrong
is the
track
community consensus for this piece may be different than the community consensus for this piece. And by the way, there's many property owners in both those areas.
there. Well, we can hand
that's-
out this map with
That's
the
what, when you're trying to
survey,
develop a community
with some
consensus,
interactive hyperlinks, and get people to kind of interact with us. And that doesn't mean that won't lead to a second survey, where we got all these responses and we're like, well, now let's do another survey to drill down on those points that you want to know more about. Knowing X, Y, and Z, what would you say to this? Or having this as a possibility, how would you,
I think we're all saying sort of the same thing. We just
I
have to
think so too.
allow the
Everyone wants to get it
community to
right.
drive the process.
Keep it simple.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of finalize this survey and create like a hyperlink, maybe QR codes, things that are, for the more tech savvy, and then paper for the people who just want the paper. And Mike is gonna help me do that, and our resident millennial here is going to help me, I think we should have some input from the
Is that a
younger
real thing?
population.
Yeah, we can make it a real
Not
thing.
just us Gen Xers and otherwise.
One of the hyperlinks will connect to the historic survey that we did.
I think so.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
we should,
Some
well,
people would
copy
really
it,
like to read that, reread it.
reread it.
Yeah, just that list of things that you read, like, is this still what you want to see?
Yeah.
What on this list don't you
Do
agree
you have
with?
comments?
There's
Write
a
in
lot
margins.
more in this.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, there's a lot more in
Yeah, you could say, do you agree with this statement, yes or no? And you put the statement, and it could be 10 or 20 of those statements that they say yes or no. And
Right.
see if there's overwhelming support for
I
those
mean, I was trying to
statements.
keep it like
Yeah, it won't be
20
very simple.
questions. I could take some of the, I'll give you a final version, but I think that as you have your listening sessions, we're happy to attend as well, so that there's other people there. We can then retailer this.
Well,
This is
Mike,
not-
Mike just made a really important point. It won't be that simple, but I believe in simplicity for stuff like this. It's a hard
Well, I was really
thing
trying
to
to-
balance. It's really difficult.
That second set of questions might become more significant in a second survey.
Secondary. So.
Perhaps, yeah.
So we
that's
stick more
different.
macro, and then we
But we
get
could
down
put
to.
links where people can find
Right.
all the
They
resources.
can go research. I think all the
Research
links is
anything they want.
fine, but having it attached to a question, that one, I think you really need to make sure that you're not overwhelming the.
I mean, I would even love to get to a point where you're standing there and you click a QR code and now you're seeing something that, you can interact
And we
with
want to
in
make sure the
location.
questions aren't self-answering, like they're not pushing people
There's
in a
no push,
particular
no
direction.
lead.
This absolutely has just like,
That's why I like it. I didn't find it anywhere.
do you feel you have enough shopping, food, and recreational choices? Yes or no? And then just blanks, like, if you could say, I do feel I have enough, done, yes. I don't want any more. I have everything I need because I go to Riverhead.
We could put in some Likert scale questions as well. Do you strongly agree with the statement, disagree? No.
I don't like those questions.
Oh, all right, never mind then.
Well, I did that only with the, are you concerned about affordability somewhat?
They're too
very-
open to interpretation. Yes or no?
Well, I have yes,
one
no,
thing
and
that's true
maybe
is-
Found on it.
Right.
if you told me more about it. I
There's a
don't
way
know
to
yet. I need
analyze
more
that data.
information.
That
You could have yes, no, or, yes, no, or unsure.
In here?
Yes,
No,
no,
but I can
unsure.
add it.
Yeah, I don't know how you would,
What-
is there
what is it?
some, you know what I mean? Just to get a feel of it.
Okay, we'll look at what we said in the,
I mean, my wife does a lot of surveys. And one of the things is a survey that it either pushes you to one side or the other side is a big no-no. That's a problem, but you're trying to get a commitment from the person taking the survey as to what they want.
Well, I
That
would just say
becomes
we
difficult
want
without
surveys from
ours
real, actual
living the baby.
people. Like, so we are gonna ask for your information, because then we can reach out to you and be like, what did you mean by that? Do you wanna come in and see some more information? Can we wanna attend this meeting? You know, we can get more people, not, and even when we do them online, you have to have a unique IP address, or you're just taking the same survey 10 times, so you seem like 10 people.
I think it narrows down. I think Mike's right. I think you're gonna have one survey and another, and it's gonna get small, you're gonna keep reducing it down because you need to get some answers, particularly about some of the issues that the supervisor brought up that will evolve out of that. Maybe or maybe not. You don't know until you do it.
And the use of focus groups of people who live in Hampton Bays is going to be important. Really.
Sample size as
Not-
well.
not
It's sort
From
of
the
like-
start, but,
We-
once we start
It's sort
moving-
of, the listening sessions are that. Just anybody can come in and
It's important that
share
we,
their
Yeah, but
thoughts and
I have-
communicate.
Come and yell at you if they want.
they
Yeah,
want to, sure.
yeah, but the point is, what does it accomplish?
It's nothing.
And if you're gonna report back, what are you gonna report back?
Wow.
That's important too. That's a lot you're asking.
I'm trying to
do.
figure out where the areas of general consensus are. So this is very much
Well-
like the conversation we had here today.
Yeah,
and I'm
except
not-
I think this is a little more.
you know what I mean?
scientific.
That
Oh, yeah,
allows
no,
us
I think
to
this is
better
important
understand
too. I think both are important.
At the end of the survey, I don't know if you want people to identify themselves in a census type of way, or we just stay out of that entirely, like,
Are you a resident?
Well, we have that in the beginning, but
Age.
more about your age or demographic. I don't know if you want that in the survey, I didn't put it in, but I could, or we could do it in a.
Well, you
should say
did,
optional.
resident.
Option,
Oh,
sure.
so optional.
And, again, like, people, there are a lot of people with a lot of different ideas of how to make things better or remain the same. But not everyone is going to get up in front of a group of 500 people like you had at the civic meeting, because, that can be scary for people. So I'm trying to create a comfortable setting to just have conversations about the future of Hampton Bays. And if people like it just the way it is, that's fine too. That makes our lives a lot easier. But if they do want changes, trying to figure out what types of changes there's consensus for, it's got to take some time. So all these different approaches are good: surveys, listening sessions, everything.
Well, you couldn't be accused of not trying to listen to everyone, because I applaud the fact that you're all very much engaged in trying to get it right and trying to hear all opposing different spectrum of opinions on here and make some sense out of it and build consensus with no preconceived notions of how anything should be, which is very difficult.
Exactly.
It is difficult. It's a very, very difficult thing to do, and
Nobody can really be attached to the outcome. You just have to try to ensure a fair process.
Should not be
That's basically
attached to the
how we all operate here. So,
So we go through the process and we see where we end up.
okay, so onward.
All right, thank you.
Let me know if you
Thank you for
need
everything, you
anything
guys.
else. Sure thing. Thank you for your time.
thanks.
Okay, have a good day.
Are we last?
Yeah.
Huh?
What a wonderful one to end on.
Oh, no, we have other things.
Yeah. Have a nice, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Actually, I think that was it, wasn't it?
Well, then we have updates and then we have executive session.
I'm good for until next Thursday, I don't think.
No, yeah, we could push off,
It's 1 o'clock now.
I'll just mention one or two things. So just the budget, I'm still working on September 29th. I'll file it with the town clerk. So it is coming up. I've been working very closely with our new controller. And I think everything else can probably wait. I have like 7 or 8 things, but we can wait till that. Just a reminder too that we've added some work sessions before the Thursday before the town board meetings
so that we can do agenda review and any other topics that come up. All right, is anybody else, anything that can't wait? All right, then.
Well, actually, yeah, there's one thing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank Rick and Cindy for attending the antibiotics task force. We had, it was the first one, we hadn't had one in a couple of years, and it was just really nice. We gave some presentations and to some of our members, and just, I wanted to thank you for being there. It was a great afternoon. For the first time out, you know, it was nice to get there, so, that's it. I'm done now.
Tommy John?
Yeah, about 25 years ago, someone took their tropical fish tank and dumped it into Trout Pond. And in that tropical fish tank had an invasive species of weed called kabamba. And now the pond is overrun. On September 24th, we are going to be going out and cleaning kabamba out of Trout Pond. And of course, we are seeking volunteers. I know it's a name, it just makes people break out into song. But it really is, it's not supposed to be here. It's unfortunate that it's in this pond. So we are going to be doing that as a fall cleanup to inform us as to the best way to do it for next year, next May and June, when we get out there again and clean it out for the summer months. But it's good to take it out of the water column. The water there is clean. It is not, you know, contaminated in any way. It's just overrun with this this species of plant. So that is starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's on September 24th. Volunteers welcome, and of course you're all welcome. No pressure there, but we'll be out there taking wet slop weed out of Trout Pond.
So what's involved, waders and?
We're going to be removing the weeds out of the water from out in the pond, bringing it to the shore, and then transporting it to the parking area where it is going to be put into a dumpster to dewater and then been taken away. I want to thank Kristen Doulos and Daryl. They are really, you know, the Parks Department. This is a park, and the Parks Department is putting some energies and resources toward this effort. So,
Okay, thanks.
I'll let you know how it goes.
Cindy?
Is there a little rope swing there?
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, the oak tree that had that rope swing went into the pond about 20 years ago.
I just aged myself.
Yeah. And they took out the 40-foot diving tree, yeah, and the other amenities that were there before the town owned it. You know, so liability-wise, as a councilman, I'm happy that they're gone, but I did spend my childhood there and good times.
Did you have
I'm happy
anything?
to wait till next Thursday, it's fine.
Rick?
Well, I could mention Hampton Bay's 100th anniversary, if we're going to go that far. A couple Fridays ago, great turnout, wonderful fireworks. I want to thank the town for their participation. They could not have done it without their co-sponsorship, the grant money, and also the tremendous help from Parks and Recreation, from safety. You know, everybody had a piece of it. We ended up with shuttle buses because we had to bring so many people from Hot Dog Beach to the event. It was just a wonderful night, and as much as they are thinking of it being a yearly thing, I told them they have to wait another 100 years, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a yearly thing. It was a really nice event. Fireworks were great. They could have used a few more food trucks because the
Yes.
line
Absolutely.
was, longer than the length of Town Hall, I think, for some of the food trucks there. I think there maybe was 2 food trucks plus an ice cream truck or
Right,
something.
right. It was over an hour wait for a hot dog.
Yeah, that was tough on people, but.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
All right, well, now you twisted my arm on this one, so I just want to say thank you to Louise Stalter. She actually paid for a table at the Anti-Bias Task Force picnic for the Hampton Bays CAC to try to get some more diversity on the CAC and get more people into our meetings. So I just want to applaud her for taking the initiative on that. I sat with her for, I think, a couple hours. We spoke to some residents, so I just want to thank her.
No, all right, I'm gonna have to mention 1 or 2 things. So, here's a
Thank you, Cindy.
2 days ago, they had the Surfers Healing event at Ponquag Beach. This was really an awesome event where they take developmentally disabled children and adults out on surfboards. A lot of lifeguards participated and, experienced surfers, and these individuals got to experience a taste of riding the waves. It was really incredible, the smiles on people's faces. We as Parks Department was there, and a whole bunch of groups came out from all over the place. I think years ago it was at Ponquag Beach, but it's been a long time since. It's been in Montauk for the last 7 years. Really great event, and hopefully it will continue. I gave a sort of a version of the State of a Town address in Quogue. They do this every year. It's a yearly thing in the village of Quogue. They asked me to come and sort of update the Quogue Association on things going on in the town. They also, that fund for children, the thing that's been going on at Citarella all summer long, you could round up or make a donation at the register for 7 different groups, a lot of groups that you guys are familiar with, from the retreat to the Children's Center, Bridgehampton Child Care Center, to See Me. They raised over $100,000.
Wow.
Over $100,000 for those groups. It was really, really nice. And I think everything else can wait till next time, so. All right, so we have a couple executive.
Well,
Oh. Go ahead, John.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Okay, so for exec, we have personnel matters, we have acquisitions, we have litigation updates. So I will make a motion to end our work session and go into executive session on those items.
Second.
Seconded by, Councilman Scavone, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.